Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of How to Wrestling, the world's first wrestling podcast detailing how to wrestling, how to get into wrestling, how to understand wrestling, how goodness gracious, great balls of fire, maybe even how to enjoy wrestling. Hello everyone, once again, I'm resident explainer Kevin Mann, joined by the Clyde to my Bonnie, the Rusev to my Lana, and the Skylar to my Walter White, or the way around, whichever, Joe Graham.
Hi. I'd prefer to be a Saul Goodman to your Walter White, I think. They have a closer relationship.
You just want your own spin-off podcast.
I do.
Better Call Joe.
And I want to be played by Bob Odenkirk.
I think Bob Odenkirk could pull it off.
That's a reasonable request.
Serious method actor,
Yeah.
you know. I just saw recently, not to completely hammer home this Rusev Lana point, but Joe does love garlic, and I do tend to crush it. So, I mean, you know,
Just
not forcing it.
One of the many ways.
Exactly, many ways.
Rusev and Lana.
Along with the fact that I look really good in one of those kind of suits, you know.
I look really good falling into cakes.
And Joe was also the recipient of the Gold Star Medal from the people of Bulgaria for services to international communism.
Little known fact about me, not everyone knows that.
This episode is a very important one which my heart has been filled with excitement about since I saw this requested from Alex Thompson through to the watching of it. The fact that watching stuff for it was needlessly scuppered by EE. And yes, you do need a fucking network subscription to find out about Owen Hart. More on that later. But it is about the Rocket, the sole survivor, the Black Hart himself, Owen Hart.
I don't think it was just EE that didn't want us to do this episode. I really feel like the WWE themselves, the network, has been trying really hard
Owen who?
to stop us from researching this episode. Earlier on this week, you watched WrestleMania 27.
Oh, don't fucking remind me.
I feel I should remind you again and again and again.
What, the fact that, like, for watching something for the Attitude Era podcast has filled me with a great sense of dread and foreboding, whereas I literally was running home from work excited like a schoolgirl to show you Owen Hart matches and promos. Yes, I can see the parallel there.
The things you have to do for podcasting.
Seriously.
But yeah, it keeps crashing out on us every time we try and watch any Owen matches.
And also as well, Owen stuff is quite hard to come by. I mean, when you search Owen Hart in the network, a little red squiggly line comes up underneath and says, "Don't you mean his older, more successful, well-known brother Brett?" No, we mean Owen.
I tried to search for some Owen Hart matches to send to our illustrator Dan, and this is when I knew literally nothing about Owen Hart. And the top result that came up for me when I searched for Owen Hart matches was Owen Hart died tragically. Literally the first 10 pages of Google are about him dying. I managed to somehow, I've avoided anything to do with how he dies, but that's horrible.
It is horrible that you're looking at a wrestler now who, and honestly, the reason...
That's the first thing I learned about. He's dead.
When I was filled with glee and all that, like it wasn't goes like, oh, here's the wrestler who died. I can't wait to tell you. It's really sad when a wrestler gets kind of pegged with one thing, and Owen Hart's death is something we will discuss. But it is sad that is how he is known.
That's the top thing that comes up when you search for him. That's really sad.
Have you had any experience of Owen previously? I mean, had you heard his name before? Was he someone who you'd heard much about?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about him. So I knew he was Bret Hart's brother. And obviously after watching all these matches, I feel really sad that the first two things I knew about Owen Hart was that he was Bret Hart's brother and that he died.
That's probably not how a wrestler wants to be known. Yeah.
Especially someone like Owen Hart.
So does that mean you kind of for this one, you're kind of going in a good deal blinder than a lot of previous?
Blind. Yeah. I'd say about as blind as the Mr. Perfect episode we did and sort of Kurt Angle.
So in terms of names that aren't kind of thrown around that much. Yeah, this was an interesting one. I mean, the artwork that Dan did just blew me away because when I usually send Dan a little description or kind of some stuff about the wrestler to kind of get the old creative juices flowing because Dan doesn't watch a lot of wrestling. And Owen, I was like, how do I describe him? And I sent him a message saying, Owen Hart is basically my favourite wrestler ever, so no pressure. He's the jealous younger brother of another more famous wrestler, Bret Hart. And a lot of his character was always about him being jealous and trying to prove that he's his own man. He's a notorious prankster. The fans used to chant Nugget at him for some reason, which always incensed his weird bad guy character. But as well as that, Owen was a very technical wrestler. And a lot of the style of wrestling that he was doing in the early 90s was pretty much the blueprint of a lot of the style of wrestling that you currently enjoy.
That was like the main thing I learned, I think, from watching these matches about Owen Hart, was how modern he seems.
Ahead of his time, you could
It's
say.
so... I mean, I don't know if it's... Because I know technical wrestling, it's not actually modern, really, because it was around a lot in sort of more old-fashioned eras of wrestling. But just the fact that seeing him wrestle that style against, say, Edge, who's doing a more sort of Attitude Era, hard punches type style, he comes across as so new, so fresh. It really reminds me of all the cruiserweight stuff that we've been watching.
I think that's a lot of things which new fans might find interesting, is that when one of the great things about looking back at some of these older wrestlers is kind of seeing like where, I mean, wrestling hasn't got much of a long-term memory, and other than JBL kind of going, oh, Kerry Von Texas won the Texas at the head of the Texas champion Texas in 1970. Other than that, you don't get a lot of kind of follow through and memories of wrestlers. So when you go back, it's always quite interesting to see new fans getting surprised. And you particularly are like, holy shit, 20 years ago, there were guys that were doing this supposed cutting edge stuff that we're seeing now. And that was like, with Owen trying to pare the list down to a few matches, because obviously we didn't want to just talk about the wrestler, we want to talk about Owen's legacy and also about some of his pranks and whatnot. More on that later. So narrowing it down to 4 matches was very hard.
I have to admit as well, in the tweets and the Facebook comments that we got, so many of them were match recommendations. Like,
it was
so
match heavy, yeah.
So more so than previous episodes.
And I think what's interesting about that is, firstly, it shows you that people got a very strong memory or association with Owen Hart and amazing wrestling. And it also shows as well that, there's a lot more to come with us looking at Owen, because we'll be doing rivalry episodes and stuff in the future. So if you didn't do your favourite Owen Hart match, don't shit the bed. What we're always trying to do in How to Wrestling is to give new fans a kind of a sense of the wrestler. So these 4 matches, we're trying to give Joe a good sense of who Owen Hart is. And I said at the offset, one of the big things about Owen was being the jealous younger brother of a more famous wrestler. And that's not a matter of opinion, that is just a fact. He was the brother of a more famous wrestler, Bret Hart, who's a name I'm sure you've heard before.
Yes, I'm somewhat familiar with Bret Hart. He's been on some modern wrestling show that I've seen. I wouldn't want to guess which one. Maybe WrestleMania?
Yeah, he's shown up in backstages and kind of smiling, happy to be here, folks.
Yeah, he's like a genial, slightly middle-aged / older man who is there and everyone talks about how great he is.
So he's well respected. But before we delve any deeper into the Rocket himself, Owen Hart, it is time for Jo to discuss what she learned in wrestling this week.
Somehow that you've gotten worse at playing that.
I've gotten better, baby.
So this week I learned in wrestling that after leaving WCW,
World Championship Wrestling,
Mick Foley, as made famous by Holy Foley, that show on the network, Mick Foley had a business selling leather jackets called Cactus Jackets.
Yeah, so Foley obviously, as a side business, found a load of old leather jackets that fell off the side of a truck and lent his name to them.
Were they any good?
That remains to be seen. I've never owned a cactus jacket. And obviously I love obscure wrestling merchandise, but I doubt that anyone's going to get me a cactus jacket, like,
Well, I don't know, I might do if it looked cool. If it had like a cool Mankind or Cactus Jack design on it.
Well, the one thing I will say is from looking at the kind of advertising materials that they had for cactus jackets, Colette Foley, Mick's wife, was advertising and modelling those jackets. Now, we've watched a few episodes of Holy Foley. We did review them on Patreon, but that's pretty much made us all realise that Colette Foley is the devil, and anything that she touches turns to acid and ash and fire. So I wouldn't want to buy those at all, because she's seemingly the worst human being that has ever existed or ever will exist.
If only Noel had modelled them instead, we'd all be lining up to buy them.
Unfortunately, his wife Colette, who is the worst person that has ever lived, including fictional characters, chose to wear them. So I've just got a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about the whole thing now, if I'm honest. And what is interesting about them is that anytime a wrestler has done kind of like a bit of a wacky side project and they're asked about it, they're kind of like, oh God, let me tell you. Here it is, and funny story. And I know that Foley has been asked a few times, like on Twitter and in his stand-up shows, hey, what's the deal with cactus jackets anyway? And he's just like, well, I sold some jackets and I just tried to make a bit of money for my family and we didn't sell that many. That's the story. That's the funny story.
So, are they like leather jackets? Like, what kind of jackets are they?
They're just like leather jackets that Cactus Jack might wear. The ones that had the kind of like
tassels.
The tassels and the tethering on them and whatnot. The kind of ones that you could wear on the back of a motorcycle.
I'm so intrigued. I wish I could Google them right now, but we've got no internet up here at the moment.
I'm just saying, like, the problem there is that, like, Foley has missed his true calling as a jacket salesman as opposed to wasting his time with this wrestling business, which is never going to pick up at all. He should have stuck to what he knew. Clothes is a business that never goes away. So you can't talk about Owen Hart without talking about his brother Bret, and you can't talk about the two of those without talking about their very, very famous match, possibly one of the most famous WrestleMania matches of all time, which is Owen Hart taking on his brother Bret Hart. Now, these two have faced off a few different times, and this isn't actually my favourite of their matches, but I thought from the story point of view and the significance and the history, and the fact that everyone who was tweeting in a match recommendation said, watch this match, that Joe and I should watch Owen Hart versus Bret Hart from WrestleMania 10.
Now, before we go into this match, I actually have some questions about the Hart family.
Because you only kind of found out through watching this that you knew that he had a brother, Bret.
Yeah.
Did you know that the Hart family was like a big thing?
Yes, because WWE make a huge deal out of it every time Natalia is mentioned. Especially in like Total Divas and stuff as well.
Yeah, so they always mention Hart family, even though
Yeah.
her surname isn't Hart.
Isn't it?
No, it's Neidhart.
Oh.
That's just a coincidence.
Okay.
She's the other side of the family to the Hart side.
Oh.
So, yeah. So you had questions about the Hart family?
Well, I want to know because it's something that they mention a lot in the announcing for a lot of Owen Hart's matches. Is the generations of wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So how long and how many generations of wrestlers were in the Hart family?
Well, it all kind of started mainly with, Stu Hart is the name we probably heard quite a lot throughout these matches. They always mentioned. That's the dad.
The dad. Stu and Helen.
Stu and Helen Hart.
Right.
You've been listening to your Jerry Lawler commentary today.
Yes, I have.
Now I'm racist.
I hate women.
And I'm going to prison. So, Stu and Helen Hart were the patriarch and matriarch, respectively, of the Hart family. And Stu started a wrestling territory up in the northern reaches of Canada. Started during the 50s thereabouts. Now, Stu was known as what's called a shooter. Now, a shoot in wrestling is what, Joe?
That's when something is real.
So, a shooter is someone who...
I don't know, someone is real all the time.
They wrestle for real. So he was a part of an actual club or a circuit of actual submission wrestlers.
But I don't understand, isn't wrestling for real just amateur wrestling?
Yes, but this was wrestling for real and also with a penchant for let's see how sore we can make someone.
Wow.
And Stu Hart was a submission master, not in the sense that Michael Cole's going to say, look out, he might lock in the Stu mission. Stu Hart knew ways to make people sore that no one else knew. To this day, even though Stu has long since passed, he has an intricate knowledge of the human anatomy, specifically as it pertains to making someone sore.
I don't understand what's the point of that though if you're just going to become a wrestler.
Because he had a legitimate background, and obviously in the 50s, before it was very widespread and common knowledge that wrestling isn't real. Cover your ears, folks. We've exposed the business there.
No.
But if you are a legitimate athlete or you are a legitimate wrestler and you had like actual real life experience, that lent credibility both to you and if you're a promoter, your promotion. So Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling, that's what it was called, his little territory up in Canada. It was famous because Stu was a legitimate wrestler. People knew that he was a legitimate tough guy because, you could go down to Stu's gym and he'd stretch you and make you fucking sore. And all of Stu's sons became wrestlers in their own right in his territory. He booked them to be the stars. Most of the Hart family are actually older than Bret or Owen. People like Smith Hart, for instance, Bruce Hart. These are all guys who never would have been big names in WWE or anything like that. But in Canada, in Stampede Wrestling, they were the Hart Boys. They were the stars of the territory. And Owen was the youngest of 12 children.
12?
12.
That's ridiculous. That's so many. Wow.
I know. So it's not necessarily it was a case that it was generations upon generations of Hart. I think Stu's father had some background in legitimate sport. But, he came to the country. They emigrated. You know, they lived out on the open plains of like northern Canada when Stu was a boy. So it really is the Hart family is that kind of real one generation. You've got Natalia, obviously, but it's not as if all the children of the Harts went on and became wrestlers.
Yeah.
So it is more, it's not necessarily a dynasty, it's more as like probably a really insanely big collection.
We had loads of kids and we made all of them become wrestlers.
Yeah, they all became stars. Now, obviously, as the territories wound down in the 80s and the 70s, and Stampede became smaller and smaller, deals were signed then. So, you know, hey, you'll bring in Owen, you'll bring in Brett, they'll be stars, you get some money as the promoter. And Stampede Wrestling kind of wound down as Owen and Brett went over to WWF to find their fame and fortune.
Right.
Brett was pushed as a star, you know, in one way or another. Owen was very, very low down. He was a young guy, he was quite small, he could do some high flying, which didn't amount to much in Hogan era wrestling. So Owen was relegated to pretty much, I mean, I showed you pictures of Owen as the Blue Blazer.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Hey, I'm the Blue Blazer and I'm saying you shouldn't smoke. It's bad for you. I'm going to rip up these cigarettes now. Don't even think about smoking them. I rip them up. If you do, you'll hurt yourself. And that's bad too. He was also part of High Energy with a wrestler called Coco Beware. That was really the baggy kind of, with the checked sides.
Oh, really bad, like 90s.
Yeah.
And that's, his music is from that, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of like 80s style music. So Owen was never pushed as being like a serious competitor.
See, it's interesting you mention his height, because I was trying to work out his height earlier, and Wikipedia says he's only 5'6", which sounds ridiculous.
I mean, wrestlers' heights, I will say, is a slippery subject because trying to find actual information is very, very hard.
So I'm always inclined to believe the lowest number, because I figure they're always going to try and over-exaggerate rather than under.
Oh, yeah, but I always just feel like, because I always use the Shane McMahon example when I met him. Like, Shane didn't seem big on TV. If you look at his height listed, he's never seen as big, yet he was taller than me. How does that make any sense, you know? So I always
Are
feel...
you sure he was taller than you?
Maybe it just seemed like it was.
He's, you know, your idol growing up. He'd probably seem bigger. Because you said the same thing about Mick Foley.
That's
Mick
true.
Foley is definitely not as tall as you.
He's shorter. He is bigger, but he's shorter.
You said he was taller than you.
But Owen Hart being shorter than my girlfriend, I mean,
the exact same height. He's billed as being the exact same height as me.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I've always been a tall guy, so I've been very I'm not like kind of, oh, how dare this person be taller than me? And all of a sudden, my favourite wrestler may be less tall than my girlfriend. I'm getting all, like, small man. No, not true. He's definitely tall.
I hope he was 5'6", because I think small man representation
Absolutely.
is a good thing.
But you can talk about during the eras of Hulk Hogan and small man representation,
Well, yeah.
it was not going to get pushed ever.
No.
So Owen actually kind of went back and forth between WWF. He actually wrestled a bit in Japan. He wrestled a bit down in Mexico. He wrestled back in Canada for Stampede Wrestling, where a young Chris Jericho was very impressed by the high-flying antics of Owen Hart, because he was one of the first guys to do high-flying.
And Chris Jericho's Canadian as well, isn't
He is, yes. There's actually a great picture somewhere online, if someone could tweet Joe and show it to her, of Chris Jericho when he was a little boy, drawing a picture in his notebook in school of him and Owen Hart as the tag team champions, because he was his favourite wrestler.
So cute.
So Owen was known as being like the high flyer, and Owen it was really interesting to think that he was kind of, not to say he pioneered it, but he certainly was one of the first people to bring it over into the WWF. Things that you might take for granted, like jumping off the top rope or springboards.
It's really interesting because, like, I wouldn't say the matches that we watched, there wasn't a huge amount of high flying going on. It was more technical, mat based.
And that was kind of Owen's thing, was that he was able to synthesize the kind of European mat based wrestling with some of the kind of flying and stuff that he was doing himself, and maybe some of the kind of more hard hitting like suplexes and stuff that you would get in like Japan. Yeah. So he was pretty much that prototypical modern wrestler that seems to have to be able to do a little bit of everything. Yeah. You know, we watched the Cruiserweight Classic recently, and William Regal had this promo like, oh, the modern flyer has to be able to do submissions and jump off the top rope and hit hard and do, and it's like, that's Owen Hart. Yeah. That's what he's basically saying. So definitely ahead of his time, and him getting his little push here against Brett at WrestleMania 10. I love this story, because the story, I mean, when I watched this when I was a young kid, I had this on
younger
VHS.
Brother, yeah.
I'm the younger brother, and there's no law that says just because you're older than me that you're better than me, Brett. And that's why I love this story. It's such a simple story, as old as time itself. Younger brother, older brother. Older brother doesn't want to fight his younger brother. Brett's like, I don't want to fight Owen. He's, younger brother. I'll never raise my fists in anger to my younger brother Owen. And Owen's like, I hate you, Brett! You're so damn selfish! So, watching the WrestleMania 10, this is the opening match for that, I always have shown Joe this kind of the opening moments of it, so you can kind of get a sense for what wrestling was like at the time. And WrestleMania 10, wrestling was in a weird place. Post-Hogan, post kind of big guys, starting to scale down, faster in-ring action. We saw very young Vince and younger Jerry Lawler. What did you think of young Vince?
Young Vince? Yeah, I mean, I've come across a bit of young Vince before, so it wasn't incredibly new to me. But it was weird because he was on commentary a lot.
Yeah, what was that about then?
He's not that good.
What?
I know, right?
He tends to shout a lot.
He mumble shouts.
What? Explain. What's
like he shouts, but it's not quite coherent. Like some announcers can get away with shouting lots.
Ball game!
And you can at least understand what they're saying. Whereas Vince mumble shouts, where he kind of shouts, but you can't make out the individual words or syllables.
And certainly, Owen Hart, one of the most technical. Oh, I don't know when a Hart come on to and no. Here in the World Wrestling Federation, and quite frankly, many think he's owed a win here tonight. So that was maybe not the greatest commentary in the world. No,
but it is really interesting to see little young Vince and him as well, not as a heel, because I always know Vince is the nasty heel. And he was the straight man here. He was the straight man, the little straight man. Must always make mention, because we give him shit, and rightfully so, and you give him shit, and rightfully so. But in this is very much a PG time wrestling where we're watching at this moment. In very controlled PG, young, enthusiastic Jerry Lawler as a heel. He's very good. He was so fucking good. That was amazing. It's kind of really hard to listen to Jerry Lawler in a way, because I understand that he's a very skilled man. Oh, he's one of the best. I hate him. But he's so good at what he does. Like, I like him as a wrestler, and I like him as an announcer, and I like him as a PG announcer. Yeah, under certain conditions, he's a great announcer. When he's reined in, he's fantastic. It's when he's kind of talking about, like, you know, Helen and Stu, like, dying of embarrassment because their children are fighting and all. I thought it was so fucking funny. So funny. But Jesus, Jerry Lawler here, even though he's young, he looks like Randy from Trailer Park Boys, dressed up as some kind of king. He's Jerry the King Lawler. What do you expect him to dress up as? Randy the King Lawler. But it was funny because he was there and he's wearing no top, big gut hanging on, and Joe's like, "Is he wrestling?" And I was like, "No, like, put a fucking shirt on." Like. He's just like Randy. He just didn't want to wear a shirt. I like to think that Randy, in the days when he did wear a shirt, were just terrible, tacky wrestling like t-shirts with rhinestones and. What would you rather? Topless Jerry Lawler showing off some of that fluff, or rhinestone terrible Jerry Lawler? I actually do prefer topless Lawler with the shitty cape and the crown. Yeah, I like when he had this big kind of, Billy used to call it the carpet from the Aladdin King, that jacket that he has. I just wish more announcers dressed up in costumes. Yeah, I think that's a real cool thing, because you turn into wrestling, it's like, whoa, look at this guy, he's dressed like a fucking idiot. Is awesome. He wrestling? No. Well, that's fine, okay. So you have a recap of the feud of what originally happened. It was a really great slow burn, and something which you probably don't get to see much anymore in wrestling, which is ridiculously long-term planning. Because obviously long-term planning doesn't work in a type of wrestling we have now, where every week someone gets seriously injured. Yeah. But this started like at the previous November. This is like March, the previous November. They were sprinkling the seeds, where they had all the Harts all joined up, and they were on a Survivor Series team. So it was elimination, multi-man match, and Owen was the only member of the team who was eliminated. And he was the only Hart who was kicked out. He felt really hard done by. He was embarrassed, and he was all on his own. He lost. He was the only one to lose. So then Brett takes him under his wing. They're going to become a tag team and work together. But Owen gets too jealous, and he kicks Brett's leg. Out of his leg? Yes. Which is something many people tweeted at me. So what did you think when you're getting all those tweets saying that he's going to kick your leg out of your leg? I didn't know. I never know with these things. I get sent all sorts of weird shit. Do you know what it's like being me? I honestly don't, no. Thousands of people just tweeting the words nugget at you. And leg out of leg. Leg out of his leg. It was tweeted at me as well in relation to a completely different match that happened at SummerSlam. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That leg cannon is Dolph Ziggler's going to kick his leg out of his leg. What does that mean? I was really, really worried, because I was like,
I'm showing Joe this, and it was like, they showed the recap of the feud. I was like, I better show her the leg promo. And he's like, I don't need you out there on a bad leg, Brett. You're too damn selfish. And that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg. And
you see the look in his eye. Like, oh shit, no.
I've done it now. No. I've made a big mistake. And I was worried that might make Owen seem foolish to you.
No, because it works with his character. It would be terrible if he was being some kind of like, massive, brave, bold baby face.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's such a Greg from MasterChef quote there.
Brave, bold bags of baby faces. Where's the crowd reaction in this souffle?
But the fact that he's like this little cowardly heel in a way, and he desperately wants to be accepted, and he's just as good as Bret Hart, who's so cool.
And that's why I kicked my leg out of your leg. Oh, fuck.
It just seems almost in character for him to do that.
It's so perfect. Now, when Bret comes out, and when they were showing like the clips of him with the sit-down interviews with the kind of the open shirt and all that, you were making note of Bret's handsiness. Now, obviously, Bret will have his own episode, but hot take, was Bret a hunk in your opinion?
Yeah, Bret was a bit of a hunk. Yeah, absolutely.
How about Owen here?
Now, this is really interesting because when we first started watching these matches, I didn't think Owen was much of a hunk at all. I could kind of see the appeal for Bret because I know a lot of people were kind of into Bret in his day, but Owen less so. But when we watched one of the later matches, he takes off a top at one point. We'll discuss this later, but his hair flicks out, and suddenly I was like, oh, I see it. He's really handsy. He's like 10 out of 10 on the handsy scale, with the right hair and the right kind of look. It's
nice to see a long-nosed wrestler get
absolutely,
get representation here. And there's not too many long-nosed wrestlers, are there?
Not
really.
No. Yeah. Big Show.
Has he got a long nose?
He's got quite a long nose.
He's got the big show, the big nose. He's got
Triple H has got a big nose.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's his brand.
But I think Owen's problem is that he's always slicking back his hair and he's going for this kind of weaselly, shitty.
I love that slicked back hair thing.
I love it.
And I love that he comes out with this he looks really cool with his slick back hair, and he's got Bret's sunglasses on.
He's in Bret's whole outfit, which really confused me because I was like, isn't that Bret's outfit? I guess I must be wrong about that. But no, it is Bret's outfit. It is Bret's
outfit that he's wearing. He was wearing his glasses to psych him out.
Right.
Because Bret usually comes out with his glasses and gives them to a kid. Yeah. Owen comes out and he rips up the glasses instead and throws them away. And it's really cool, the little things that they do. Like when he comes out through those cool X doors.
Yeah.
Those WrestleMania
Very
10
cool
doors.
X doors, yeah.
He comes out and there's no light on him, and he walks out and the announcer says like Owen is stepping out of the shadows, because it was Owen's kind of big moment to step away, saying his brother was always overshadowing him and he was going to come and get him. Owen's music, which is fucking sassy as shit, I love it so much. It's very high-paced, very synthy. Is it a delicious song? I mean, is it a song that you would add to your... I mean, you've got a wake-up mix of wrestling themes.
I think I need to hear it a bit more to really decide whether or not it's worthy of going on the wrestling themes playlist.
What I suggest you should do is, if you have any sort of very small victory, put that music on and then raise it.
Yes!
Yes! Woo! I
did it by myself!
That is, I mean, you will connect with the music in a way.
Yeah.
If you're not listening to that song while doing that, you've not really listened to that song.
Oh, okay. Music is my life.
Absolutely. So Owen locks up with his brother Bret and immediately celebrates.
Yeah, he gets like not even an offensive move in. It was like a...
It's like, oh, hang on, we have to start over.
Yes!
Woo! I'm big up at trying to find points of reference for wrestlers and try and kind of equate them into real life. And, Owen Hart's a wrestler I've been watching for the greater part of like 20 years in one way, shape or form. And I've only, when I was watching with you, that I realised Owen Hart... wrestling Rick Mail.
Yes.
He's got the kind of pointed features, the real kind of desperate, I just feel like I could imagine Owen Hart driving towards someone very fast and going, "You old git, come here," that kind of thing.
Yes.
I really think he's got that going for him.
He needs a bald man to be his Adrian Edmondson.
I think so.
Be a bottom tag.
Maybe British Bulldog could have been like, Aid Edmondson in this scenario or whatever.
Real talk, bottom as wrestlers, fantastic idea as a gimmick. Someone take this right now and do it.
You can have that one for free, Triple H.
Please.
There you go. So Owen Hart displays amazing technical skill and at the same time amazing dickishness.
Yeah.
So he will constantly, I mean, that's something you've talked about with wrestlers you like to see, which is them mouthing off.
I love it so much.
And when he's got his brother in a chin lock,
yeah,
and Brett's kind of got this look in his face, which is, what the fuck's going on? And Owen's just going, I'm better than you! I'm better than you!
You can really see where Chris Jericho got his heelishness from.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of Canadian wrestlers would kind of view him as being like hell high regard.
Because Kevin Owens as well, he's
absolutely
really good for the mouthing off.
Would
he have listed Owen?
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the reasons his son is called Owen is in tribute to Owen Hart. He's like, he held him very high.
For a second, I forgot that Kevin Owen's name wasn't actually
Kevin Steen.
Like, that's weird. Owen Owens.
Owen
that's
Owens.
An odd name.
It is. So you can even argue as well that Kevin Owens' actual ring name, because he couldn't use Kevin Steen, was Kevin Owens. It was obviously because of his son, but his son's because of Owen Hart. So, you know.
Wow.
And that is definitely, I mean, I get the kind of joy from like the Kevin Owens, just pure fucking dick. Like, as in, you can be the biggest dick in the world, and you know you can be so cool, and we'll still cheer you, but you are a dick.
It's
and
great though,
I get that with both of them.
Kevin Owens is more like, because Owen Hart cares so much. That's where his like heelishness is so good.
Yeah.
Whereas Kevin Owens kind of cares so little.
Yeah, it's just there to make money, like.
Yeah.
Whereas Owen like thinks he's got this weird point to prove constantly. So he displays, I mean, some of the ground wrestling here. I know we recently were watching the Cruiserweight Classic. We were raving about like Drew Gulak and Zack Sabre Jr. and Jack Gallagher as well. The fact that they're doing all this kind of fast-paced, mat-based grappling. And Owen and Brett are so fast at what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a lot of it is because they're kids growing up with each other. I mean, they're probably...
Yeah, having a brother or a sister, you always do play fights, so you kind of get to know their moves. Yeah. I think if you're also a wrestler and you're being trained from a very young age, even more so. So it makes perfect sense that they're so in tune with each other.
And I love that as a story, which is like, you know, a lot of times, and I think a lot of the reason why a lot of people fell out of favour with mat-based wrestling is it was viewed as this like kind of necessity. It's the start of the match, you can't go for your moves, so we have to like pretend to do this kind of slow, grindy, like roll around a bit, get up, headlock, arm lock, fucking wrist lock, and then just go through the motions.
That's terrible.
And that's really soured a lot of people on it, because it's just like, it's boring, there's no psychology to it. Why are you going after his wrist and then your neck? Whereas these two, it's like, Owen has to prove he's better. And these two were taught this by their dad and how best to do it than this. And the two of them, if you kind of have that in the back of your mind and they're going like fucking pit bulls, it's because they're going through all the moves, all the things, and they all know the reversals, and it really just tells this amazing story that these two know each other so well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Totally off topic. But when did refs stop wearing bow ties? Because the ref in this match is dressed so well.
With the little baby blue,
little
black bow tie.
Yeah.
I think it would have been around towards the start of the Attitude Era, end of the New Generation, so like 96, 95, I think, even as early as that.
It's a trend that needs to make a comeback, so I'm saying.
It's good.
It's really good.
They look snappy, very snappy.
You need the refs to look smart.
Absolutely. What I would say about that ground wrestling, a lot of the technical stuff we saw at the start, I mean, so many times where I've been trying to get people into wrestling, and I'll show them all the high spots and all the kind of, you know, the ladders and the exploding tables and all that. And that makes them go, whoa. And then it's kind of like, here's a wrestling match. And it doesn't connect in the same way. And I've always wondered if that was like just showing people the wrong stuff, or they're not really like into it as a wrestling fan. But like the noises you were making while they were doing this technical stuff was like, you were screaming whoa and on the edge of your seat. And I really just think that's further evidence that you can dazzle a new fan, and you can dazzle someone who's seen just kind of maybe some of the more flashy stuff, and not have to kill yourself in the process.
I think there is a bit more to it though than that. Like, I think if you'd shown me this match a year ago, I don't think I would have appreciated it nearly as much, because I think you do need to watch maybe just a bit of wrestling to kind of see the difference between the sort of the mat-based wrestling that you were talking about a second ago, the slow, awkward, boring, you know, the stuff that Randy Orton does. I said it. Hot take.
He hears voices in his head. One of them is a critical British lady telling him that she doesn't like his mat wrestling.
But I think you do kind of need to see some shit in a way before you can maybe appreciate. I'm not saying definitely.
No, you're absolutely right.
I think that would have been the case.
I wonder if it's a case kind of like if you've only ever had amazing pizza, then you won't ever appreciate it because you never had a shit pizza.
Yeah.
It's probably like that as well at wrestling. You got to have some of that sour to appreciate the sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that maybe was going into it here.
I love Owen's selling. Can we talk about his selling for a second?
Please.
God, he's so good.
What was it that he was doing that kind of impressed you?
I don't know if there was anything like in particularly special. Just the way he reacts to moves is just so. It just seemed really real and like quite funny at points as well.
I was gonna say there's like a certain kind of snugness to the moves that they do that kind of makes the selling more believable. Like everything's kind of fast and snappy. There's not like a second where they're kind of like, oh shit. You know, the wrestlers have that kind of deer in the headlights.
Like kind of have to think this through
a
sec.
Yeah, you know, and that's totally understandable that happens in wrestling matches, particularly if you're calling a lot of it on the fly. And this is not, Brett and Owen wouldn't sit down with their fucking PowerPoint or whatever and go, right, we're going to do this and then we're going to do this. You know, a lot of this is just kind of them deciding, feeling the crowd, knowing what they can do and going with it. But Owen's selling makes it so believable, and Brett as well, because Owen goes after Brett's leg. And so many fucking times with wrestlers, and they forget which leg they're selling, and they'll stop selling it because they're doing a comeback. Brett, start that leg being worked over till the end, it's sore, and you believe it. And it's not oh, my leg is sore. It's, no, I'm trying to deal with this and overcome it. I'm only going to sell it so much that, you know, it's aggravating me, not kind of, wham, my leg is sore. So I was really impressed with both of them with their selling.
Just that, though, because if I remember correctly in this match, so Brett gets thrown off over one of the ropes.
Yeah.
And then he lands awkwardly on one of his legs,
yes.
right? So was that planned?
Yes. That was
because Owen is facing the other direction when that happens. So you wouldn't think he's like, see, you fell on your leg. But you can tell from Brett selling that he's hurt.
And that's why Owen
goes
after it.
And then Owen targets it. So it's just like, it's just so good.
It's the difference between like a really shit, like little, you know, a layered story. You know, because that's what wrestling is storytelling. Yeah. The difference between a layered story where it's like, and that, you know, and one which is just kind of, and then they did the big move, you know, and that's what you're getting with the likes of Brett and Owen, is that kind of higher level. Owen hits some really sick moves when he takes control, like some big suplexes, his spinning heel kicks that he does, where he kicks them right in the side of the head, is really kind of, you know, that idea of like, you have to hit someone hard and bam, let's make a big noise. Like you can watch a lot of wrestling now, and every wrestler's doing a super kick or a big kind of strong bam and a big noise. Owen, like for the time, doing those kind of slappy kind of kicks that make big noises and big impact.
Some of them are so loud.
I mean, if you think like 2 years previous to this, you were seeing the likes of Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
2 years?
Yeah, 2 years previous to this.
So when was this?
This was like 1994. But yeah, 2 years previously you would have had the likes of Hogan in the main event, or that's the kind of style. And those guys weren't hitting each other hard. They certainly weren't doing suplexes, and Owen does a fucking tombstone pile driver at one point. He just drops Brett on, and then he dives off going for the big headbutt. Fucking incredible.
It is. It's just amazing.
So Owen goes after the leg, and he kicks Brett's leg out of his leg in the process. And Brett starts kind of mounting a comeback, but it's that kind of awesome, ow, I can't do my full load of stuff because my leg is taking me down. And Brett's meant to wrestle later in the night as well, and they're like, is Brett's heart really in it? Does he really want to fight his brother? And the whole time Owen's going, yes!
At one point, Owen gets Brett in the figure 4 leg lock.
Ah, yes.
Makes me sound like I'm a very knowledgeable fan. I asked Kevin what it was called, and then I wrote it down.
I had to tell her, like, you know the thing that Charlotte does, the figure 8? She's like, yes, it's that, but as a more basic version of it.
So I have a newfound question, I guess. Mm-hmm. So Owen gets Brett in the figure 4 leg lock.
Yeah.
Which is like his legs are kind of entwined with Brett's legs, basically.
Fun fact, if you're a new fan at home, try do the figure 4 leg lock on someone.
Why would you do that?
Because you won't be able to.
Yeah, I can't do that. No way.
Every single time someone goes through the figure 4 leg lock when they're wrestling their mates, me included, right, you get their leg and you pretend to be Ric Flair, and you go, woo! And then you step over the leg, and then you forget what else you meant to do.
Yeah.
It's really complicated.
No, it looks really complicated. But yeah, he gets him in this leg lock, and then Brett kind of spins around. He does like a little roly-poly kind of thing, but sideways. And then he's winning.
Right. What's happened there...
Because I would have thought that once your legs are all tangled like that, and then you like twist around...
You'd be mad sore.
You just get yourself in more pain.
That's true.
More painful.
What the theory is, and honestly, as someone who's never successfully locked in the figure 4 leg lock in my lengthy backyard wrestling career, I say backyard, living room, okay? We use couch cushions. We're not lunatics, okay? I've never successfully locked in a figure 4, so I've never been able to test this kind of shoot theory. The idea is that when you're at the figure 4 leg lock and you have the guy like that, and you're putting pressure on their leg because you're using their leg to kick their leg out of their leg, then you turn them over, and by turning them over, you're apparently reversing the pressure. So the person who's originally receiving the move, now they're applying pressure to the other person's leg. And so that's why you'll always see Ric Flair will put someone in a figure 4 leg lock, and then they'll start bringing their arm up like that, looking like they're trying to get like a really hard stuck in shit.
You keep mentioning these Ric Flair matches, which I've never seen.
Well, Ric Flair was my go-to explanation for figure 4.
Ric Flair wrestle.
Charlotte does it as well, I guess,
Okay,
where like she'll be put him in that move, and the other person will start going and start trying to turn over, and they turn over, and like it's like, oh my god, they've turned them over. You meant to be reversing the pressure.
Okay, a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Why didn't he do that straight away? Because he was there in this leg lock for like ages, and if you knew you could just get out of a move by spinning around, why not just do that immediately?
Because you can't just flip him over. He has to kind of, if you notice, he tries to like rock him over, get the bit of momentum. He has to kind of, start building it so he can then turn over, okay? It's like if you're an old person, when you're 40, try and like roll over on your side. You can't do it straight away. Yeah, just you have to kind of work your way up to it, like,
Owen kicks Brett's leg, and then it just sounds wooden.
I think I always asked you to kind of like keep an eye out for, or an ear out, I should say, when Brett is getting kicked in the leg by Owen.
It's horrible.
Like, it's just... Like, that noise you were hearing...
Oh, that doesn't sound good at all. I tried to make a wooden thump noise.
On a wooden table.
On a wooden table.
What you're actually hearing there is Owen kicking the fleshy part of Brett's thigh. So that's... He's making contact there, pretty much.
Right.
So it's sore, but it's making a noise. But there's certain parts of the body, like, when people are doing chops, you're hitting them there. But it's going to make a noise, look sore, probably feel sore, but no long-term damage. So that's what you're seeing there. There was a move which you were very impressed by. I know it's a good move when you turn around and immediately ask me what the name of it is. But there was one in this that Brett did when he was mounting his comeback that you were really impressed by.
So you told me it was called the Bulldog, and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, does anyone else do that move? Because I've never seen it.
Trish Stratus used to do it when she was first starting off, and then did like a modified, more advanced version of it once she became a proper wrestler.
She's Canadian as well, isn't she?
She is, yes. I don't know.
So is it like a Canadian move?
I don't necessarily think it is, because I think a lot of people do it.
That there's like a Canadian style of wrestling, which I really like.
I thought it was like a secret Canadian club that controls wrestling. And who told you? Like, so yeah, the Bulldog headlock is one that's been done by not just Canadian wrestlers, but it's a move that is let's just say it's easy to do poorly, because you have to get him like right and snug in there. When Brett does it, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
Don't judge that move based on Brett doing it, because when Brett does a move, he tends to do it better than most of his peers. So they start trying to lock in the sharpshooter, which is Owen and Brett's famous submission move, which the canon has always been like, oh, their father taught it to them as this like ultimate, can't reverse it. The reality is someone in Japan was doing it, and they're like, here, do you want to nick that? Yeah, alright, go on then.
Jeez. It's always the way.
That's how it is, like, because it was like Sting, Sting?
Yeah.
Sting does the Scorpion Deathlock, which is the same move, and people are always like, oh my god, man, Sting stole it from Brett, or no, man, Brett stole it from Sting, and it's like, no, I just stole it from some lad in Japan. Oh, okay, that's alright then, I guess. Like, he's got some name we can't
We haven't heard of him.
We can nick it. It's nice. He's not coming over here. What's he gonna do? Complain? He can't even speak English. We can steal it. It's horrible that it's something we're noticing a lot of when you kind of work out going, hey, where's that move come from? It's like, they just stole it from some guy in Japan. No biggie. Like,
yikes.
So yeah, they're trying to lock in the sharpshooter back and forth, and Jerry on commentary is kind of going like, oh, that's Owen's move. Brett stole it from him. There's a very, very fun moment where Owen kind of cuts out all the fancy wrestling and he just hits Bret right in the dick, right in the leather regions with a low blow and a kick. Owen gets a very, very scary looking roll up, like Bret's up on it, they're up on the shoulders, and he rolls him down. You think Bret might reverse it. Owen manages to hold on, and he wins in a real big upset moment, seeing as Bret was like former champion at the time, was off to the main event that night to wrestle for the belt, which he also won. The idea of Owen, the younger brother, beating him was like huge upset, like massive upset. And what I love most about it is, you notice Bret's face as soon as Owen pins him. He doesn't go, oh, gosh dang it. He just looks like miserable.
Yeah, he's
sits
depressed.
up. And Vince is like, I don't think his heart was ever in it. Like, he didn't want to fight his brother.
Aww.
And what a lovely little sad story that is. With the two brothers kind of falling out of favour with each other. And they would like play on this story for years before the two of them kind of reconciled on screen, which is really cool.
I must admit, the attention I was paying to Bret's face was minimal. Because Owen expelled white fluid from his mouth and covered his own face. It was just shit tons of this whiteness.
You claim it was fluid, but for it to be a fluid, it has to be able to flow, and that was almost like it's almost like a jelly kind of.
It was like a jelly or some kind of
white
sticky substance.
phlegm kind of stuff. And Owen wins, and he's all like, "Yes, I did it, woo!"
All over his face.
And they do the promo with Owen, and he's got it. I don't intentionally showing you wrestlers who've got spit all over the place.
I think you do. I think you love to watch me squirm.
Guys, she's buying it. She thinks that we're doing this wrestling podcast and just about to show her gross spitting phlegm.
How to phlegm.
How to gross. What did you think of the match, though?
Absolutely loved it. I've given it 4.5 stars out of 5.
Very good.
Definitely got to be one of the best ones we've seen generally.
Well, is it like of all the matches you've seen on How to Wrestling?
Yeah, it's definitely up there in a top 20 list, top 10 list maybe. I'd have to sit down with a pen and paper then.
What I will say, there is another match I want to show you. We'll probably do it if we do Bret or like a rivalry episode. But these two had a cage match.
Yes, some people on Twitter have mentioned the cage match.
And I will say, because I know you're someone who's previously said you don't like cage matches because they're kind of a bit like hokey or whatever.
Gimmicky, yeah.
Yeah. We should watch that match and your mind will be blown by it.
Are you sure I won't be distracted the entire time by like, he just walk out the door. He just walk around that door.
Oh, don't worry, honey. They addressed that problem.
Yeah.
So you did have Owen, like, Bret wins the title later that night and did the whole thing where, like, Bret was the champion, but, like, Owen won King of the Ring, and Owen was always like, I beat you, Bret, you know, so he was always claiming he was better. Owen won King of the Ring and referred to himself as the King of Harts. Excellent.
Fantastic. Love it.
And Owen, like, would have these, like, tights with, like, you know, like the King of Hearts, like, on the side of it and all that. It was really, really cool. The next match which we watched, one which was recommended just for in terms of blistering fast pace. Because a lot of the time with Owen, when you're watching some of his matches, he is holding back in terms of how fast he can go. So we decided to watch Owen Hart versus Shawn Michaels from In Your House 6. And in one of those true fitting kind of show Joe the pay-per-view and, you know, join it randomly midway through so you can kind of get a feel of the flavour of what was going on at the time. Because you could watch WrestleMania 10 and be like, whoa, Madison Square Garden, brother versus brother, technical wrestling, crowds into it. Was wrestling the best thing ever in 1995, 1994 kind of? Well, alas not, because when we joined in, started watching this, we saw Duke the Dumpster Drozy cutting a promo. I asked you what you thought his gimmick was, and you said, is he a bin? You might as well be. He's a garbage man.
What a gimmick, eh?
Yeah, Vince McMahon spent all of yesterday afternoon thinking of that one.
Do you think he'll ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame?
Unless it's kind of like a gag Hall of Fame. Wasn't the idea, like, at the time, Vince kind of sitting around kind of going, what if a garbage man was to wrestle?
If he'd been awake like an hour earlier, I bet it would have been a milkman.
What if we had a paper delivery boy? Or even earlier,
a wrestler.
What if we had a wrestler who just couldn't sleep at night? What would happen?
The insomniac.
What if there was a wrestler who was a waiter? You know, there wasn't a lot of thought going in at the time, and I think In Your House 6, just kind of going from the grandeur of Madison Square Garden to the grandeur of a very small little white house that they had for this.
I love the goofiness of the brand of In Your House. It reminds me a lot of this kids TV show that used to be on when I was growing up.
Oh, is it the thing where you had to like run through all the rooms and fuck shit up?
Fuck shit up, make a big mess and find the item that you had to find. I forget what it's called. Like,
I used to think it was called Upstairs Downstairs, but that's the one that David Brent comes up with in The Office. His idea. But yeah, you had to like rip through shit and find your item or whatever. Finders Keepers!
I don't know if it was
it was Finders Keepers.
I think it had the word house in it.
Finders Keepers House? House of Finders Keepers? No. Regardless, you were very were you impressed by the kind of the goofiness? I mean, was it like WWF like you knew, or
no? It seemed like we had created it on universe mode on 2K16. Like, we'd gone, what's this weird-ass gimmicky brand we can come up with? Here we go, In Your House 6.
You know what the funny thing is as well, right? Is that you might think, oh, In Your House, was this is kind of like one-off kind of, here's a weird house gimmick.
It's 6. I'm guessing there were 5 previous.
Oh, there were loads. There was like 20-something of them. And the majority of them had that weird house in the fucking front.
It's terrible. It's like clip art. It's like WWE hired a graphic designer and he died, and Vince was like, shit, what can I do? And he went on Word and found some clip art and was like, that will do.
For you as a new fan, because I mean, you watch the modern show, and even if they're in a smaller building like for NXT or Cruiserweight Classic, I mean, the production values, like how they make everything look so fucking pro. And like, does it feel weird going back and watching kind of a show where like you've got a little bit more of a primary school nativity play kind of set as opposed to HD mega screens?
I mean, I think I kind of expected it a little bit, because when was this then? Like 1996-ish?
Yeah, thereabouts, 95 kind of.
So the 90s were like that. I mean, just everything back then was like designed for kids, I guess.
You thought the 90s was an era, but actually wasn't. It was just it was a cutout of an era with a kind of a board hanging up against it. It was a painting of an era. Yeah. Like all those things you like about the 90s, like Street Sharks and stuff, they weren't actually real. It was just a painting. It was just been held up. Yeah, I know.
That's amazing.
It is. Jim Cornette was spotted.
Yeah, which is really weird, because I was like, I recognise that guy on the left. Like, what's he from?
Well, yeah, what do you know Jim Cornette from?
I know of him from Wrestling with Regret. That's it. Like, him and Brian Zane are tied in my mind as being like friends.
So Jim Cornette owes like one kind of you're to Brian Zane is what you're basically saying.
Wow. I saw Jim Cornette and I was like, oh, who's he? Oh, he's the one who's been on Brian Zane's videos. I hope Jim Cornette somehow hears this and realises that's how he is known to me.
To be honest, I do think, given that he's getting a little bit older, Brian Zane does a better Jim Cornette impression than Jim Cornette can do these days.
Brian Zane's Jim Cornette, it's just fantastic. It's 100 times better than actual Jim Cornette.
So what did you think of Jim Cornette being like Owen Hart's manager coming out here? I mean, did you notice his special gimmick that he had with him?
The tennis racket.
Yeah, could you maybe offer an explanation as to why you think Jim Cornette had a tennis racket? I mean, because you didn't seem to question it. Is that like just a thing that you're kind of just used to wrestling? Like, he's got a blank, that's his gimmick, fuck it.
I'll be honest, it was something I was going to ask on the podcast. I was saving it. But, no, I don't know. I assume, has he just come from a tennis match? Him and Vince McMahon, like, they've not bothered golfing. They're going to start tennis playing. Is it, or maybe it's badminton? Because
he was all, like, dishevelled coming in. You thought maybe he had done a quick set. Like.
He kept slamming it on things and throwing it around and waving it.
I would love to do an episode on Cornette at some point. But what did you think of him as a manager? Do you think he added to the Owens act, or did he get in the way, do you think?
I think he was a little bit distracting at points. Because I do believe there is a fine art to being a manager. Within the context of wrestling.
Yeah, I'd say.
Like, Paul Heyman is kind of like the pinnacle of best possible managers, I think.
Ooh! Those two are very much kind of polar opposites in many ways. So
what, him and Jim Cornette?
Yeah, like a little bit of a rivalry almost of who's better. And it's interesting that you would say that as a new fan.
He's so good at doing the promos, but when the match is on, unless it cuts to him, you're not going to notice him.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what a manager's role should be.
Shouldn't be making a load of noise.
And slamming tennis rackets down. He seemed a bit kind of like, look at me.
Oh, interesting.
And, when you've got Shawn Michaels in the ring, you can't really be doing that.
Now, this match, like, as we started to watch this, I was like, oh, Jesus, this is going to be fucking... I regret this immediately. Because you were so fucking smitten with 90s Shawn Michaels. It was ridiculous. And I thought, oh god, this is terrible because we're going to completely overshadow Owen. Although I thought for a second, no, Kevin, you're actually being quite brilliant there, because that is kind of apropos. That's what happened with Owen's career. He did get overshadowed an awful lot by the bigger, shinier, fancier toys.
You think of Shawn Michaels as bigger and fancier from this?
I mean, he's pretty fucking fancy here, Shawn Michaels.
I just love him. I'm sorry. I love him in this. Just his entrance. When Shawn Michaels' music hits, you expect him to kind of come through the doors, and he does.
As is typical.
Yeah, as is expected.
Well, that's what me and the rest of the club would be expecting from their wrestlers.
And instead, no, he comes from the ceiling.
Pardon?
And it's great because he comes from the ceiling in this like spangly outfit, looking like a gay icon. And then he does this ridiculous dance, which isn't sexy, but I love that because he's got the sexy boy music, and his whole thing is he's a sexy boy.
So just so if someone's wearing an outfit that's not sexy, a loud voice going, sexy, 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 won't make it sexy.
No, I feel really bad because I don't remember who it was who said this, but someone tweeted at us saying that Shawn Michaels is like a 8-year-old boy who's like just discovered what his genitals do. It's really trying hard to show that he knows what sexy is.
Yeah, that's why he's rubbing up against that rope and all that,
like,
doing the big dance. Like.
I just love it so much. Like everything about Shawn Michaels here is ridiculous and silly, and I love it.
And I love how much Owen hates Shawn Michaels as well. They're doing the story that Shawn Michaels had been like injured, and Owen said that tonight he was going to like give him a concussion and all. It was really funny because like, you know, even with the network where they do edit stuff, and they do edit like certain kind of very salacious lines, you know, particularly as it relates to shots to the head. But there is frequent talk in here where they're like, Owen Hart's gonna give him a concussion tonight here, McMahon. He's gonna make him brain dead. He's gonna have to retire from his concussions. I'm kind of like, Daniel Bryan, don't. I don't know, where do you stand in the whole using concussions as a storyline?
I can understand why they did it back then.
Didn't know, I guess,
did
they?
Know. Well, yeah. I hope they probably didn't.
No, they didn't, really, I don't think.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I know our knowledge of it has greatly increased.
Yeah,
like.
Of course. So I can kind of like, I'm not going to criticise them too heavily for making jokes like that if they didn't know. But like, I think nowadays that would be tasteless.
I think so, yeah. I think knowing what we know now, that's kind of quite poor taste to do that.
There's other ways you can kind of draw heat or whatever.
Yeah. What was interesting, though, in this match is that you get a great tale of two halves here. Shawn Michaels starts off the match with mind games. He leaves the ring, goes to high-five everyone. Then Owen leaves the ring to do the same thing, but no one will high-five him. And he's like, what's wrong? Why won't you high-five me? And then we get the oddest lines of commentary of all night, which is Vince McMahon going, unquestionably, Shawn Michaels is a hot dog.
He's a hot dog and he knows it, is another one. So how is Shawn Michaels a hot dog exactly?
Well, I want to know what you think that might mean.
I want it to mean that hot dog is a term for a sexy boy.
Because he's like a phallic kind of image? Or?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
He's a hot dog because he's made of assholes and pig cheeks. No, a hot dog, if you're hot dogging, the verb means that you're kind of showing off. Oh, look at this guy hot dogging all over the place. And a hot dog is one who hot dogs. So a person who often hot dogs, as in shows off and all that jazz. The only reason I know that word so much is that Macho Man Randy Savage, when he feuded with Hulk Hogan, didn't like that Hulk Hogan was always hot dogging and grandstanding, and he gets so angry talking about Hogan being a hot dog. And I thought that was funny.
Well, Hulk Hogan is a hot dog.
He is a hot dog.
Literally looks just like a hot dog.
He's actually, like, if you could eat Hulk Hogan and you wouldn't go to prison because he is just made of hot dogs.
I think he is made of pig anuses and parts.
If you see him, just eat him and you'll find out that we're true. But Shawn Michaels here is known as being a hot dog because he's very much like, hey everyone, look at me. I'm a hot dog. Get your hot dogs.
So what does let's get some mustard for that hot dog mean?
I think that's what is called like failed wordplay, where one of the commentators was like, shit, they're talking about hot dogs. When we get some mustard for that hot dog?
No, it came out of nowhere. There was nothing about the hot dog. That conversation had happened already. Then continued with the match. And then out of nowhere, I think it was Jerry Lawler says, let's get some mustard for that hot dog.
Well, if there was silence, then obviously it's Vince taking out the headset going, why the fuck did you abandon my hot dog metaphor? You're gonna say, we need some mustard for that. But Vince, that is like, shut the fuck up. And then we get back to hot dogs.
So Shawn Michaels in this match was acting in my opinion, like a total heel.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
But you say he's not. He's a face.
Total face here. Total face.
But he's not, because he's obviously a heel.
I mean, why is it that he's doing that's obviously a heel in your mind?
Well, wasn't he just like kind of showing off a lot and being sneaky and, I don't know, like heelishness?
It was because there's a real cool thing that he did, which was he put like Owen in a headlock, and you get to the count of 5, and then if you hold on, like, because it was an illegal move, and you get to the count of 5, you have to let go, otherwise you get disqualified. And Sean was there till the count of 4, and he went whoop like that really quick, and then put it back on. And I thought, that is a dick move.
It's proper dickish moves.
A lot of it with Sean, this character he had at the time, was that he was acting like a dick, but he was doing it to heels and being very entertaining. And Owen's a great foil, obviously, for that. And Owen getting all enraged because Owen's got such a short fuse.
Because like the thing where at the very beginning of the match he immediately leaves the ring, which is a very Kevin Owens type thing to do.
Yeah.
But yet he's not a heel.
I know. I guess he's just he's playing up that kind of charismaticness. You know, that's what he would do. That was his whole spiel.
Do you think a gimmick like that would work on the modern day roster?
Oh, absolutely. If you take
like
someone,
a heel that's not a heel.
But no, like in the fact that if you had someone like a Rich Swann or someone like that, or just kind of a real kind of charismatic guy, and he kind of plays like fun games on his opponent, and kind of makes his opponent, particularly if they're like a nasty heel, like Owen is, like make him the butt of the joke. That's the kind of how he's being a face here, is that he's making the heel who takes himself very seriously the butt of a silly joke.
So I don't know if it's just because I instinctually root for the underdog, but like to me, watching this match, if you weren't sitting next to me, I'd be coming out of that match going, oh well, Shawn Michaels is the nasty heel, and
poor Owen
is like being rejected by everyone, and he's just trying his best.
Owen's really trying hard in this, like to keep up with Shawn.
Goes to high five all the audience, and they reject him. That's cruel.
Like Owen, like he's desperate to prove that he's just as good as Sean, like, because like Sean, like, he does his big flip up, and then Owen does it straight away. And what happens loads is that Shawn Michaels just out wrestles him like at every corner, and like Owen builds that frustration. It's really, really brilliant. But like the pace of this, like once the hot dogging stops and they actually start going move for move, those guys were bouncing off the ropes like non-fucking stop. And that's a real sign of a guy, if he's got like cardio, if someone can really go. If you can keep running those ropes, which ain't fun. And Owen and Sean, wow, those two can go fast. It's ridiculous.
Weird, interesting point here. So, I know I'm always one to kind of point out strange things like dongs and what have you. But visible panty lines. Something you
the old VPL,
you never see it in current day wrestling. Like, any gender. No one, you can never see their pants. I don't know if it's the design of the wrestling gear. I assume it must be.
Must be.
But in this match, and I've noticed a couple of other matches from this kind of era, you can see their pants underneath.
So specifically Shawn Michaels?
Both of them in this match.
Really?
Yeah, you can see clear pant lines.
That's so strange.
It is, yeah, because you just never see it.
Usually when you'll see this guy with longer tights, you can kind of see the outline of, like, because they might wear like a set of tights underneath that in case, something gets pulled or whatever. In Shawn Michaels, usually more than often, his butt would come out in one way, shape or form. He loves it. But it's very interesting. I wonder if that's like, we need to get some sort of like seamstress or someone with knowledge of it, because I've not spent a great deal of time looking at the pant lines.
See, this is
wrestlers.
the real skill that I bring to this podcast and to the wrestling community in general is
pant lines.
I pay attention to things like penis shapes in the tights and pant lines.
And we need to know this. It's important.
It's very important.
Owen power slams Shawn Michaels on the outside with a sickening thud. And it's very scary watching guys do moves to the outside. Owen does some dives and slams to the outside in the matches we watched during this time. And there ain't no padding out there. You got very thin mats and pure concrete underneath.
Plus, we watched this really shortly after WrestleMania 27, where The Miz gets a concussion falling on the concrete. So I'm particularly sensitive about that at the moment.
Absolutely, and he keeps kicking Shawn Michaels in the head as well. They do one where he kicks in the head and Shawn like acts like Owen has shot him in the back of the head with a shotgun, like just collapses down. There's a really sick, gross moment.
Oh, Jesus.
Where Owen, and I swear to God, I'm not doing this on purpose, but Owen goes over to Shawn Michaels and he does the kind of the golfman's nose clean where he just fires that booger out like a rocket.
Intentionally expelling those boogers.
Spring-loaded boogies. It's fucking disgusting.
Absolutely gross. And I like in my notes because that's immediately followed up by Shawn Michaels did a sexy hair flip.
To get the kind of bugger out of his face.
Yin yang.
One man is sexy, the other man kicks him in the head and shoots a fucking snot at him. Owen Hart ain't no dreamboat, folks. Really cool finish though to this, where like Sean goes for sweet chin music super fast and Owen just gets out of the way super fast, but then Sean just hits him straight away. It's like kind of like dodge, 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 miss the quick time event. Shawn Michaels wins. A shorter match, one where Owen is maybe a little overshadowed, but I think really important to see in terms of what Owen could do, and maybe often what Owen didn't get a chance to do, because Owen never got a proper world title run. You know, that bit with Brett we talked about, that's really as close as he ever came to being in that main event. And he often was there to kind of put other guys over, make other guys look good, solid hand, yada yada yada. Just worth bearing in mind, because there's a lot of matches that Owen does where he seems just to kind of, not say he goes through the motions, but he's doing like a more mat-based style, and he can go real fast.
Yeah.
Just maybe his opponent has to be able to keep up with him, and Shawn Michaels could as well. Did you give this one a rating then?
Yes, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Bonus points given for Shawn Michaels' sexy rhinestone cowboy entrance.
That How to HBK episode is going to be something else.
I'm so excited. But yeah, I did feel that Owen was given less of a chance to show off in this match compared to the first one. I know that's maybe not fair to say, because I know that was his big match. But yeah, it's a shame that I'm already thinking this the second match.
Yeah.
I know now that kind of happens more and more.
It's really funny because, I mean, there's a bit I remember reading to you. You probably didn't know who was Owen at the time because it was, so long ago, but I was reading to you from Mick Foley's book and him talking about like Foley and Owen were in this like tag match and Austin was their partner, and they were sitting on the apron watching Steve Austin was getting all the reactions for doing very basic moves, and they're kind of sitting and chat to each other, kind of feeling, you ever kind of feel that he's the steak and we're like the potato, and Owen's like, you're a piece of parsley, Mick, that's all you are, and kind of like just like that they knew that they were that they were probably not being used to their fullest potential at all times. But unlike a lot of guys, Owen never seemed particularly bitter about that fact. He was kind of, well, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. The next one is a match which I'd never seen before, and I was very, very excited to finally sink my teeth into it. It's often talked as being one of the really great kind of hidden gems from Monday Night Raw. This is from 1997, the 3rd of March, my birthday. Fun to think that I would have been 9 when this came on. We had Owen Hart versus the British Bulldog for the European Championship in an episode of Raw that emanated from Berlin, Germany. Fun fact, at the time, this is one of the lowest rated episodes of Raw ever.
Whoa. This
was one of many episodes of Raw which ratings was so low it actually made the network consider cancelling Raw at the time. Think about that. That's how fucking weird and unpredictable wrestling was in the late 90s.
Jesus.
That's a weird thought, isn't it?
That is weird.
Well, you think, main event match on one of the worst rated Raws in history. This thing should be a fucking stinker, because Owen Hart is taking on the British Bulldog, and the two of them are tag champions together, and they're both bad guys. This is a recipe for disaster. It's fucking amazing. Oh my God. Right, something you probably figured out about British Bulldog quite early on. Number 1, he is British. Have you heard of the British Bulldog before?
Only briefly in mention. He's one of those ones that kind of is mentioned quite a lot as being one of the all-time greats. One of the legends.
Billed as being from Manchester.
Really?
Billed as being, so.
I know Mick Foley mentions him a lot in his autobiography.
Yeah. British Bulldog as well is the brother-in-law of Owen Hart.
Yes, that's so weird.
And it's not starting weird to start to think now, like, kind of, this is where this extended wrestling family comes in. So, Owen Hart is a brother-in-law to the British Bulldog, because the British Bulldog married one of Owen and Brett's sisters.
Right.
Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who was Brett's original tag team partner and Natalia's father, he married another one of the Hart's sisters.
Wow.
So, and that's weird because he's Neidhart.
Yeah.
Married a Hart. So it's not like a double-barreled name. He's not Jim Neid. And his wife was Hart. It became Neid, Hart, or Neid-Hart.
It was just Neidhart.
Neidhart, and he married. So you've got, and these wrestlers were all on the roster together at one point or another.
That's so strange.
They did form like a super group in '97, which was Bulldog, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, and a guy called Brian Pillman, who he was one of Steve Austin's tag team partners back in the day. He trained with them, and they became the Hart Foundation, because Bret is like, I can't trust anyone. These guys are my family, like legitimate family, and they all traveled together. They all got on with each other. Owen and Bulldog were like the best of friends, like inseparable. Nice. They ribbed each other and pranked each other mercilessly, but they were very good friends. So Owen comes out with Slammy Winner on his tights.
Very cool. Love it.
I showed Joe the requisite video you got to show everyone of Owen Hart, which is Owen winning, in big inverted commas, his second Slammy Award around this time in 1997. What did you think of Owen basically appropriating the Best Bow Tie Award that he was meant to present?
I love it so much. I love that side of Owen Hart, which is kind of just a dick.
There's so few wrestlers who are like willing just to be a complete dick.
Yeah, and it seems as well like he was a complete dick constantly, like throughout his whole career. Even
like the early 90s, where it was kind of a little bit more comic book, all the way through to the late 90s, where people were starting, if you were a bad guy, you had to be a little bit cool. Like, that was the whole, bad guys, cool leather jackets, cool sunglasses. Owen always had that dickishness to him.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well, because I know a few people mentioned on Twitter that Owen Hart he was really genuinely one of the nicest people ever to be in wrestling.
Absolutely. He's always was well known as being that, as being a guy who was in wrestling not to become a big name, not to become the world champion, or to, unlike his character, he wasn't there to outshadow. The reason Owen was there, and the reason he wrestled for WWF and wrestled as long as he did, was because he wanted to be able to retire early and spend time with his wife and kids, because he wanted to make as much money as he could, because everyone always says, oh, they love their family, man, I love my wife and kids. Owen was always like, that was right in the back of his head, like, I'm doing this because I want to provide for my family. That was his motivation, very like Mick Foley in that way, the way Mick Foley talked about how he always wanted to earn money for his family. The two of them were as thick as thieves, because Foley would never spend a dime on the road, and Owen was just as bad. Like, there's all these stories of the two of them, like, wrestlers like, hey man, can I buy you a drink? Like, no, but you could buy my dinner for me. Or you could pay for my hotel room.
Let me crash at your house.
Yeah, like, that's kind of hustler lifestyle almost, to try and make as much money, when all the other guys were out partying and, buying flash cars. Owen was never like that.
Wow.
And that's kind of, it's really interesting to see, that kind of aspect to him.
That kind of aspect, I think, is quite modern as well. Like, obviously that was such a huge part of being a wrestler back then, and again now that's less so.
It's not a part of being a wrestler now.
It is more like Kevin Owens, like spending time with your family and coming home as often as you can.
Not getting fucked up or anything like that. So Owen definitely like a real positive role model for aspiring wrestlers, I would say.
Wow.
I mean, he had a positive impact on that sense in the wrestling industry, I would say. This match starts off European as fuck. There are so many European flips, like springboards. Owen just runs up onto the top rope and does a fucking backflip in like the first 10 seconds. Yeah. It's a good match when the first thing you do is pause it, so you can emphatically take down notes about why this is blowing. I always thought Owen 97 slowing it down, couldn't do that stuff anymore. Of course he fucking could. He just probably wasn't doing it as much because he didn't need to.
Yeah.
But he started off with two heels in the crowd. But straight away they start to play off the fact that Bulldog, he's English, European. So they build him as the good guy in the match. Owen starts being a bit of a dick. And that's how the crowd gets into it. They really start to get into it. Owen left me speechless with some of the moves in this match.
They were so fancy, just like... And Bulldog as well, doing flips just out of nowhere.
He's a big fucking guy.
Huge guy.
Holy shit. Yeah. I didn't expect that at all. I've been watching Owen Hart matches for 20 years, and I just think it's testament to the man that during this match, and I'm meant to be giving you a sense of why Owen's awesome.
Yeah.
And 20 years after the fact, I'm going, what the hell did you do that? Not many wrestlers can do that, can surprise you 20 years after the fact, like.
I love as well, he continued his heelishness in this match. He pretended to pull a muscle in his leg, which again, you never see wrestlers just be like, oh, I pulled a muscle. It's always like, ow, you've kicked me and really injured me.
Yeah.
But no, he pretends to pull a muscle, which I love. And then when Bulldog kind of looks at him almost like, oh crap, is he okay?
Because he's my tag partner and my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to check he's okay.
And then Owen turns around and just starts stamping on him with his like not injured leg at all.
And I love as well, there's something kind of pure about like, you know, a lot of the crowds in America were kind of almost being desensitized to the antics of the wrestlers because they were touring so much and doing so many shows. There's something so pure about this German crowd that as soon as Bulldog goes to check on Owen and Owen betrays him, they nearly start a riot. They're like, excuse me? Have you no decency? He's calling the security guard, excuse me, that wrestler just...
It was very rude.
He was very rude. And Owen as well, of course, doing the most minor of things, which he believes necessitates him to throw his arms in the air in complete and utter victory.
Every match, I love it. He does it several times. Just be like, yes!
And it's not so over the top that it's like...
Annoying or anything.
Because he just goes a little, yes, woo, like a little...
He's really chuffed with himself.
And he always looks fucking exhausted when he's doing like, yes! This match really just showed to me how much more Owen is capable of like controlling a crowd, much more than the last match probably showed.
Yeah, which was more of the Shawn Michaels show.
Yeah, but Owen really just had the crowd in the palm of his hand in this one. Like, you know, knowing like when it was right time for him to do something nasty, or when it was the right time for him to get his comeuppance. Like, he gets picked up by the Bulldog and he goes to press slam, and then he drops Owen on the ropes, and Owen, like, you know, gets hit on the crotch, and he's like, oh, you know, really like, really great like kind of pageantry here in this, I guess. There's like a problem with this match, I guess, is the fact that they started off so hot. Yeah. And then you kind of had an ad break in the middle, and then it came back, and the second half wasn't as fast.
Didn't they have like 2 ad breaks in this match?
Yeah, honey, have you ever watched Raw live?
Well, no.
Two ad breaks in the main event. You could be so lucky these days. In America, right? What these American people, they watch the wrestling, and it's got. And this is, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I'm not exaggerating at all. There's 86 million ad breaks.
86 million, and you're not exaggerating.
Every minute.
Every minute?
Every minute.
How do they even watch any wrestling?
What actually happens is there's so many ads that the ads actually come out of your TV, and then they go and they find any wrestling that you've got on DVD, and then they overwrite it with ads. Jesus. That's how many ads there are. So the fact that we had 2 ad breaks in this, I thought was okay.
Lucky.
But it did hurt the flow.
It absolutely hurt the flow, yeah.
Yeah. I did like the end of this, though, where there comes a big roll-up and Bulldog just manages to eke out a victory, and the two of them have a little handshake in the end, but Owen's got 2 slammies. So who's the real winner? I like as well because Bulldog, he wins the European title, and so he's the European champion and the tag team champion. So that's why when Owen was nicking his slammy, he goes, you may have 2 titles, but you don't have 2 slammies. And let me tell you something, Vader, you don't have 2 slammies. So I would say I love this match. It was really, really great. Yeah. A little gem, you know?
Yeah, really fun to watch. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
So maybe that little pacing kind of towards the end.
Yeah, the ad breaks. Yeah, definitely. I guess
that's what happens when you watch a Raw match. Now, something really kind of... I thought this was going to happen quite a bit in HT Wrestling, where we kind of come full circle with something.
Yeah.
Remember way back in one of our early episodes, we talked about Steve Austin and
I remember Steve Austin. He's a wrestler, right?
He is. He's a bald wrestler with a goatee.
I think he did the Broken Skull Challenge.
He did, yes.
Yeah, okay.
If you remember way back in our Steve Austin episode, where Austin had a very serious neck injury, a wrestler gave him a pile driver and broke Austin's neck.
Yeah, terrifying.
That was Owen Hart.
Seriously?
Yep.
Because we didn't watch that match for the episode.
No, we watched the documentary where they talked about it, and I didn't watch the match because I find that match a bit morbid to watch.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't.
Because you do have like 30 seconds of Steve Austin with a broken neck and Owen Hart kind of going, the fuck are we going to do here? Like, and it was really, really awkward. But I've always wondered, and it was just before a time when there was Twitter and people being interviewed all the time. I always wonder, more than we talked about D'Lo and draws, the effect that a very serious injury like that.
I was just thinking that. Considering Owen Hart's was this really nice guy, surely it must have.
I mean, because we watched the segment, I showed Joe a few Owen Hart promos and stuff, and Owen coming out wearing the 316. Owen 316. Yeah. I Just Broke Your Neck t-shirt.
Such a cool t-shirt.
I've got that t-shirt.
Yeah, you said that and I'm shocked. I've literally never seen it ever. You wear it ever. Which just shows you've got too many wrestling t-shirts.
Too many. There's no such thing.
Too many.
That's bad considering my new kind of plan, my new gimmick is going to be get as many bad wrestling t-shirts as possible.
We haven't got room.
If anyone wants to send me a core t-shirt.
Stop it. I'm going to line up all your wrestling t-shirts and take a photo of them and see if anyone on Twitter or Facebook can beat the number of t-shirts you have, because it's ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure people will be able to.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, Owen, when he was wearing that t-shirt and we saw the kind of the promo, and you could tell that he was a little bit awkward.
Yeah, it wasn't his normal heel, considering it's such a heel thing to do.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing the whole thing.
I don't think he was well up for bigging up the fact that he broke the man's neck. Now, there's lots of stories about this. Austin did hold a grudge, for lack of a better term, because I think he felt that Owen didn't make amends appropriately or whatever. For lack of a better term, Austin wasn't satisfied with however it went down. And not to say that one person is right, one person is wrong, but there was a disagreement at the time. And obviously, Steve Austin being the number one guy in the company, probably not a guy that you want to think poorly of you. And I do think it may have hurt Owen's upward trajectory in many ways.
I'd be surprised if it didn't. If Steve Austin did hold a grudge like that, and he did have a lot of say. Now,
just to point out for us, I'm not saying this just by any means it's okay that Owen broke someone's neck. It was. I mean, it was an accident. It was a terrible accident, and that's all it was. But Austin, using pretty much a similar maneuver, broke a guy's neck in Japan way back in the early 90s. So I always kind of thought there is maybe more to this story. Well, I thought it is kind of an important moment in Owen's career. It's not a nice moment, but it did kind of come at maybe a not such a great time, because what you had around this time as well is Bret Hart leaving the company under bad terms, and Bret left. And also along with him went the British Bulldog.
Is this period where Bret left, is that anything to do with this... oh God, what do you all call it? The not the sharpshooter. That's the name of the move. The swerve move.
The screw job.
The screw job. The Montreal screw job.
It is, yes.
To do with that. Okay.
All in due time.
The mystery.
The mystery. But you did have Bret leave, and at the same time as Bret leaving, because of how of the fucking awful situation, Bret left. British Bulldog left.
As a result of this thing.
Yes. Of this screw job. And Jim the Anvil Neidhart left as well. So you had basically for Owen, he goes there from being on the road to having his brother and his two brothers-in-law best friends, and now he's all on his own.
But he didn't leave. But the others two did, and it's because of this thing that happened, which I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I mean...
But it can't have been...
Owen was tied up in a contract.
Oh, okay.
People thought that, they were doing it to spite Owen. The reality is, I think that Owen was probably sure that he was going to get more money from the WWF that way, and that was what he was most concerned with.
Well, would he have been as big a name as the other three? And obviously not Bret and the Bulldog, but...
I'd say he's probably on equal footing with the Bulldog, maybe a bit more. Definitely a bigger star than Jim Neidhart, not as big a star as his brother Bret.
Yeah.
But he's definitely someone who could have went to another company and got a big payday from it. But for whatever reason, legal contract, spite otherwise, he stayed. Which then led Owen having his new gimmick, which was he was the sole survivor, and then there was Owen instead of then there was one. He was the last heart beating that was still left in the company after the purge.
Last heart beating.
Yeah,
that's great.
And that's why I showed you that promo of him grabbing Vince by the scruff of the neck, and he's like, "I'm tired of all this bullshit. You're not gonna." That was them playing off the real life tensions of Owen being left on his own in the company.
Right. Okay.
So he did have kind of an interesting kind of career trajectory there. And when we next watched Owen wrestle, we were watching him wrestling Edge at Breakdown 1998, and Owen kind of pivoted towards more of a character who's there to kind of maybe put some of the younger guys over. So he wasn't ever going to get this big main event run anymore, which was a shame. Even though Vince Russo, the writer at the time, loved Owen, thought he was amazing.
Really?
Yeah, big fan of Owen. So we watched Owen Hart and Edge, or Edge, as I'm taking to calling him.
Stop that.
Truth time. Me and Joe watched all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was our first big trash show we watched as a couple.
Aw, it's not fair. Buffy's not trash.
It's good trash. I'm saying
not
that.
Trash.
Why is it not?
Nah, Buffy's genuinely good.
It does have its moments, though.
Of course.
Rubber monsters and
like
whatnot.
any 90s show.
But it was a show where anytime they said the word eggs, they said eggs.
And they also did it on Total Divas.
Yes, Nikki Bella says, hey, I'm going to go... I think she was going to freeze her eggs.
Well, there was an episode, it was really clever. I don't know if you can quite comprehend the cleverness of this, but there was like a dual storyline in Total Bellas where they went to a farm, free-range farm, where they looked at the eggs. And Nikki Bella also wanted to freeze her eggs because John Cena doesn't want to have kids just yet.
And the episode was called Egg Madness. I think I'll just say, America, I love you. Your candy is great. Check out our review of Candy on Patreon if you're interested to know deeper thoughts on that. But you have ruined the word eggs for me.
Eggs.
And as an extension, the song Eggs and Sausage and a Side of Toast by Tom Waits. So you've really done a fell swoop there on me. And now Edge is a victim of this as well. On my WrestleMania 27 notes for FGR podcast, I wrote down eggs. I didn't write down Edge. And that's an important match, and he's going to be called Eggs. It's your fault!
I'm going to go on your phone, and any instance where you have to write the word eggs, I'm going to replace it to the spelling of eggs.
So getting back to Owen taking on Eggs here, his reputation as a family man, an all-round kind of good provider for his family, and kind of a guy who was not a party type, it really did kind of mean that he was starting to be kind of like a good... I don't say a good egg, but like something for the younger wrestlers to aspire to.
Right.
And I think what's really important here is that if you look at the likes of Owen Hart, and he was kind of helping out people like Edge, Christian, some of the younger guys, the Hardy Boys maybe were coming up as well, and they were kind of maybe sitting under that learning tree. It meant when those guys were the top guys in a few years' time, they were able to kind of spread that good word down to the talent beneath them. And I do think a lot of the reason why, as you mentioned, that you've got like... guys don't go get fucked up now. They go and they kind of hang out, they have nice times, they play Lego and video games. I'm not saying it's because of Owen Hart, but he definitely was one of the first wrestlers, him and Foley, really, who was kind of like, there's any stories about Owen Hart getting fucked up and, pulling out his dick and trying to piss on someone on a plane.
Yeah.
And that's because he was focused on using his status as a celebrity or as a star not to get fucked up and show off about it, but to provide for his family. And I think that's
so nice.
It's a really, really, it's a good mentality. And I think that mentality is so important in wrestling, because you see so many of the guys who, get burnt out and they fucking are bitter and they get fucked up. And a lot of it is to do with them kind of not knowing how to deal with that fame and not being focused on a kind of a goal or whatever. And I was really nice to see that Owen was kind of nurturing some of this younger talent here. So this match was taking place in the midst of the Attitude Era, in the midst of Austin and McMahon, a very different company to the one that would have a sexy Shawn Michaels dancing on top of a little house. No, this was a much different place indeed. We are in Canada, and Owen gets a big hero's welcome when he comes out, and also a big nugget chant.
Yes. I still don't know what this nugget thing is.
You know selling this. How many times did you get tweeted about nugget? Because I know it's been a while.
1,000 times.
1,000?
87 million times a minute.
God, almost as many as the ads that the American people tend to have.
I'd say it was exactly the same number.
If you were to guess why Owen Hart is called a nugget.
Well, I know... Okay, so the bits that people have tweeted at me are... admittedly, I think, were deliberately out of context. So I always tweeted things like, Owen is a nugget, probably about a couple of 100 times. And then there was, Owen's called a nugget because he's a piece of shit. So I know it's something to do with a piece of shit.
Okay.
I'm assuming.
So basically, when we first did an HGR podcast episode where the fans chanted nugget at Owen, and admittedly I didn't know why they chanted it, because I started watching wrestling after the formation of that promo about Owen Hart being called a nugget. I just flippantly went to Billy Adam, just call him that cuz it's a silly name and he doesn't like being called it, and he'd be all, I am not a nugget,
because it could imply that he's small and unimportant.
Well, that's kind of a vague. I was like, I'm not a nugget, and I just thought it was I was more fixated on the fact that it was very funny that Owen, who always took himself seriously, got so upset that the fans would call him a nugget. And he's not, he's a winner and a Black Hart.
Is it insulting because it's comparing him to mechanically separated chicken nuggets?
Oh honey, you're making me hungry now, come on. The reason he's called a nugget is because
he's a piece of shit.
The reason he's called a nugget. I've got enough of this fucking shit from those people who tweet me, and now you're getting the same, and you're going to turn it around on me?
I just don't know what nuggets have to do with shit. What's the correlation there?
So Owen Hart was the last Hart that was left, as we said. And Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who claimed kind of they were the reason why all the Harts had left. Triple H said in a promo, you're like a little nugget of shit that when you flush the toilet gets left behind. You know, the way there's a little nugget of shit that's...
No.
Well, sometimes if you
What is going on with Triple H's diet?
It's mechanically separated poop is what he's got. He's got a little nugget that's left behind. So he was implying that the Hart dynasty was a big shit, which they'd flushed down the toilet, but Owen was a little nugget of shit that was left behind.
Horrible.
And by me flippantly kind of going, this calm for whatever. It's one of the reasons we figured out that the Attitude podcast had an audience in the worst way. Is when I woke up every morning for like 2 years with 80 million people saying, hey, by the way, Owen's a piece of shit. Now, I don't want... And now it's extended into my personal life. My fucking girlfriend, my fucking daughter, my fucking family, you fucking do this to me. You know, I swear to God, like, I can't stand no more. But yes, for the record, internet, Owen Hart is a piece of shit, in the words of heel Triple H in 1997.
Surely there's a nicer way to inform you that that's what that means.
140 characters. I mean, you got to say shit.
Means piece of shit comes from Triple H's promo, not Owen is a piece of shit. Out of context, that just sounds like the wrestling community really fucking hates Owen.
It's funny getting these tweets of like nugget shit lol.
Or like, it's like you've gone like, in a great length about how much you love Owen Hart and all of your fans hate you, and they're like, no, your favourite's a piece of shit.
Well, it's going to take a lot more than that to make me stop podcasting. I'm the sole survivor. God damn it, I'm a winner. So I use the rage of Owen to get me through these kind of dark moments. So the fans do chant nugget. And just so you know, in case you ever listen to another podcast that I do and I say it wrong, this is the real story, okay? So this is the canon now. I know what nugget means. I will never have to tweet about it ever again.
Hey, everyone, always tweet Kevin. In fact, do it on his birthday and Christmas and any public holidays. Just tweet him saying Owen is a piece of shit.
I think Kevin's a little bit too happy today.
Bring him down a level.
Yeah, more importantly, bring Owen Hart down a few levels.
Yeah. You know what? You should just reply any time Kevin tweets ever. Just respond by saying... Owen is a piece of shit.
Why just take pictures of shits that you've unsuccessfully flushed.
And then tag them Owen Hart.
And me.
And Kevin,
yeah. So I can look at that.
So he can look at it and know what Owen Hart is.
Hey, maybe I'll get sick, huh? How about that? Maybe I'll actually get physically sick.
Throw up onto the pictures that you've printed out of these shits.
And maybe I'll do a little cry as well. We'll get all the fluids. All the fluids. So that's why the fans chanted nugget at Owen.
Right.
I also like that Owen was wearing his danger gear. I very much like his...
love his danger gear.
He got the caution. I always make my wrestling characters on video games. I always kind of go for that Owen Hart singlet look.
It did seem, though, if he was wearing that singlet, like I feel he should come out to Cesaro's entrance music.
Well, at the start of his thing, he does have a...
Did he?
He does, yes. Well, he's got a lot going on, I think, because he's got a, well, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. You know, there's a lot of bits in there. But yes, he did have a siren in that song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention the signs in the audience, because I know we're peak Attitude Era.
Did you know, was it noticeable that it was a different time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's obvious from, like, the camera as well, like, the tone of, like, the colours.
Much darker, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's darker. The fans in the audience, you can tell they're suddenly much younger. Because a lot of the early matches we were watching, it was older people. Again, I've mentioned this in Mr. Perfect and the Hulk Hogan episodes. It's kind of...
more families, I think.
Middle-aged and upwards, who are in these very pale colours, like stripes as well for some reason. Always stripes. But yeah, in this, everyone's in black t-shirts, Austin 316.
Like university student kind of, was where they were kind of pitching that kind of age group.
And younger. There's a lot of kids there as well.
Unfortunately, a lot of younglings
as well.
A lot of
angry children.
Yeah, there was a number of interesting signs, including Jerry Lawler being on commentary with a giant call police sign behind him. And a sign as well near Jim Ross that said, Undertaker is not a homosexual.
Isn't he?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for the information, signs.
Well, you know.
So, we get, at the start of this match, real great offense between Owen and Edge. I would almost liken it to being quite like Daniel Bryan, like, you know, that kind of chain wrestling, you know, they're kind of holding on. The kind of, the dexterity, I think is the right word to describe. The fact that Owen, even at this older age, I mean, this is, you know, Owen, you know, good few years after when we saw him at the start, being able to kind of go all the way back on his heels, arch his back, and keep his balance with his neck. It's amazing.
I don't know if this is very unfair of me, but to me, it seemed like Edge was holding him back a bit.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
It just seemed like Owen was able to do moves a lot quicker than him. He seemed more flexible as well.
Well,
Edge was
Edge
moving
is
slightly slower.
He's only the Padawan here, I guess, as opposed to Owen, who's very much the master at this point. And I mean, in 1998, I couldn't think of any. Like, very few people would be able to put on a match like Owen could with anyone. Kurt Angle was not really
there, wouldn't he?
No, Kurt Angle didn't debut with the company until a year after this, actually.
That's
so you had
horrid.
two people whose paths never crossed.
Jesus.
Yeah, in 1978, all the Kurt Angle was really doing
was those
training.
matches would have been like...
I know. Unbelievable.
Also, I want to mention, Owen Hart comes out in a local football jersey or something.
Yep.
Some sports team. And he takes it off, and that's the Hantsy moment. I just thought...
You see the hair kind of billows out, isn't it?
He looks really fierce, and I just feel like our listeners will want to know exactly when that moment is so that they can...
He almost had anime... I think someone should put anime
Sparkly
eyes.
anime eyes,
over that. He's very, very handsome there as well.
10 out of 10.
This is great, because, I mean, as hard as it is to find out about Owen being a piece of shit all over again, there's nothing quite like the feeling. I'll tell you this, if you're at home debating whether or not to introduce your partner to wrestling... Introducing your partner to wrestling and then them confirming your suspicions that one of your favourite wrestlers is a stone cold hunk. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with, the general rabble that you watch wrestling with. Owen avoids Edge's dive to the outside at one moment, and I was very happy with this because it was another instance of Owen kind of very beleagueredly going, woo!
Pointing his head.
And he also pointed his head to indicate intelligence. And if a wrestler, anyone who's smart, I'm smart, you're smart. How do we show that? Well, we point our heads when we do smart stuff.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm in the kitchen and I mightn't have enough garlic, but then I start pointing at my head and realize I've got garlic paste. I'm smart. You see? So Owen pointing at his head, I like that a lot because wrestlers need to show that they're smart. You were confused by the dive attempt by Edge, though.
Yeah, it was really weird. Okay, so Owen sort of gets out of the ring, squirms out and then points at his head.
Slithers away.
Yeah. And meanwhile, so Owen's facing away from the ring and Edge is about to run at the ring ropes, it looks like, or dive out of the ring towards Owen. And then instead of diving out, he just hits against the ropes.
Yeah.
And then just falls on his back. Like some chump. He looks stupid doing it.
I think what happened was that the reason Edge did that was because he knew he couldn't do his dive, but he had the momentum, so he put up his fists like that so he would bounce against the ropes and do a controlled roll backwards.
Why didn't he dive? Why couldn't he dive?
Because Owen had already moved out of the way, I guess.
But he was still pretty close. Am I spoiled by Sami Zayn doing these suicide jumps out of the ring and he can basically go 20 feet?
He jumps out of the ring and he goes over the Titantron.
Just flies.
Lands in the next town for the SmackDown taping, looking around. Hey, let's go. Maybe that's it. It could be. I know that wrestlers do the kind of the fake out dive. Sometimes when they're running against the ropes, think, oh, I'm not going to do it. Sammy does his little flip through, his little dancing type thing. Because
it just seemed, the timing of it made it look like Edge was about to dive out of the ring onto Owen.
Lost his
confidence. Owen pointed at his head. And then Edge was like, shit. And then was repelled and fell back.
Edge just grabs him every... You didn't tell me I was wrestling no brain box! What the fuck's going on? Not to dwell on the Cruiserweight Classic too much, but it's been a big part of our lives recently and it ended very recently. We're recording, just end of September 2016 here. But one of the things which they said a lot of times in the Cruiserweight Classic, and I think Owen kind of really signifies this a lot, which is... Yes, they do dives, or yes, they do flips or aerial moves, but it's always for a reason. There's no gratuitousness to any flashy offense. He's doing it for a reason. And I do like that when Owen does go off the top rope. And Owen, you can watch some of his matches from the 80s in Japan, and he's perfectly capable of doing his springboards, moonsaults, all that, but he'll only do one or two in a match.
Yeah.
Not gratuitously. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, it probably fits the style and the psychology of WWF a bit more. And number two, probably added a few years onto his career in the same token as well. The fact that he was able to keep wrestling all through the 80s, never got serious injuries, him or Brett. You kind of tended to avoid a lot of injuries throughout most of their career because their style was quite safe.
Yeah.
So it's an important thing, I think, for younger wrestlers to
wise.
learn. Absolutely. Very, very swift offense by Owen. He counters Edge's counters, who counters his counters.
Now, there's a tongue twister.
Seriously. And at one point, Owen goes for his top rope victory roll. He's on Edge's shoulders and Jim Ross is very quick to point out that it was the very move he used to beat his brother Brett at WrestleMania 10. Ooh!
I feel I have to mention at this point, the announcing on this, and I realise it's peak Attitude Era announcers because Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, but the announcing was fucking awful.
How so?
They kept talking about things that were just not to do with the match.
Because people would often, if you asked any Joe Schmo off the street,
they would say those are the two.
Jerry and JR.
Yeah.
During the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
So what was it that they were like?
Okay, so first of all, they kept going on about Steve Austin, which was weird. But peak annoying talking about Steve Austin was when one of them said, I'll tell you what's going through the mind of Steve Austin right now. I just do not care. I don't care what's going through the mind of Steve Austin right now in a match between Owen Hart and Edge. Why would I be thinking about that? And then, once they finish talking about Steve Austin, you'd think they'd go back to the match, but no. No, they have to talk about Jim Carrey. So why the fuck were they talking about Jim Carrey all of a sudden? They're like, oh, will he be here later on? Or maybe I'll see him later. Or we'll catch up with Jim. Why?
All the more reason probably that stings as well is because it's not as if there wasn't an awesome match going on. Because there was. There was a fast-paced match. And I think Owen got an electric chair drop from Edge where he gets thrown off his shoulders face first. It was a really sick move. And yeah, they're talking about other things, other people. That was the thing at the time. Most people who were buying pay-per-views were doing it not to see Owen Hart or Edge. They were there because of Steve Austin. There was a big surge in fans during the Attitude Era because Steve Austin was this guy you had to see. And if it's a 3-hour pay-per-view and you just put down $40 for whatever and you tune in, their logic, WWF's, is, well, they need to know about Steve Austin. They need to know that this show is centered around Steve Austin. What's Austin up to? What would he think about this? What's going on? That match in the ring, that's there for us to watch.
So would they do this for the entire show? Just every match, it's like, oh, it's Steve Austin. Oh, he's on the toilet now. Oh, Steve Austin. Oh, what's he doing now? He's having a cup of coffee.
And when Steve Austin isn't on the screen, the other characters should ask, where's Steve Austin?
They should get Big Brother? They used to have these 24-hour cameras on the contestants. They should have one for Steve Austin. So we can always think about Steve Austin.
I think Stone Cold should be louder, funnier, and kick more ass. I think we should talk about Steve, especially during any matches where Steve is not in the match. I think it's always more noticeable during the opening contests.
Because I was wondering if it was maybe going to be tied into the fact that Owen broke his neck.
Nope.
No mention of it.
And I guess that's something which we've never really talked about in the Attitude Era podcast, but I guess because when we watch those shows, it's in the big context.
Yeah, you watch
the big context is what's happening with Steve Austin? Because he's the star. And I guess, again, back to the parsley and baked potatoes, I guess. That's Owen and, being not the featured player. And if wrestling was a contest of who is the best at putting on this performance, Owen probably would have been the top guy and he would have been the champion and all that. But unfortunately, it's not. And he was put to one side, I guess, in many ways as a result.
It's amazing that he didn't get bitter about that. Because I consider myself a good and decent person. And if I were in his shoes, I would be fucking furious that, Steve Austin's great and all, but come on.
I guess if you're at a point in his career where he was feeling like he was secure in his position and the money that he was making, it was a case of don't make waves.
I guess so.
It's really, really sad. I mean, and this match is awesome, as we say, really great. So many near falls towards the end. There's a really brilliant bit where Edge goes to jump off the top rope and you can clearly see Owen rolling away and Edge just kind of lands on his feet, but Owen continues to roll away, then get up and go, woo!
There's a really weird end to this match.
Oh yeah, I love the ending to this match because a blonde person showed up.
Who I immediately knew was Christian.
You went, hey, it's the other one.
Who's the other one? The Not Edge.
The Not Edge.
Yeah, Christian.
Yeah. This was Christian's debut.
Yeah, which is really weird because he appeared out of nowhere. I was like, oh, there he is, Christian, because I know that they're established tag teams.
Yeah.
And then everyone else was like, who is this guy? I was like, what's going on?
Time traveling Joe
I know who he is.
You stupid idiots! Of course it's Christian.
I'm the one who doesn't know, not you.
Are you the kind of person who watches Better Call Saul with someone who's not watched Breaking Bad and be like, how do you not know who that character is? He's so important in season 3. So yeah, Christian was unidentified at this time, I guess.
Right.
And your explanation for how Owen won this match was brilliant to me.
Yeah, Edge got like distracted by Christian's beauty, and then Owen pinned him.
He wanted Senpai to notice him. Like.
Yeah, he followed him through the crowd. What other explanation is there? It can only be, I know that they're established tag team partners, so they must be soulmates. So he must have seen this long blonde-haired gentleman who looks a bit like him, been like, wow, that's the one.
So Edge...
I'm going to spend the rest of my wrestling life with him.
Edge just looks at him and is like, hey. And Christian's like, hey. And he loses the match. I've got to go get him, like.
Yeah, I don't care that I lost. I've just got to go find that hunk.
We were towards the end of this match, and you went, I've got a really bad feeling Owen's going to lose this. Why did you think that?
I think it's partly because I'm aware of the fact that he's always kind of almost made to be second fiddle to a lot of more established wrestlers, and I knew this was young Edge, and obviously if they don't know who Christian is, I knew that his career trajectory was about to really take off, so I kind of figured this was like a build-up for him.
Interesting, yeah, because I don't want you to walk away from these matches we watched thinking that Owen Hart was like a jobber, like he was always losing to people, or by any token that he was like D'Lo, where it was like, you know, they tried, they gave a bit of a push, and they lost their faith, and then they just gave up on him.
I'll be honest, that was more kind of what I was expecting.
Interesting. So that's kind of the 4 matches we watched with Owen, and something that we need to talk about with Owen, I mean, because we mentioned him being, you know, someone who's not got a reputation of being a bad person or being a dickhead or anything like that. You know, not someone who's getting fucked up or anything. The stories, though, about Owen, which people tend to regale a lot, often with great fondness, are Owen's rib stories. Now, this isn't about like Owen getting everyone around and having delicious succulent ribs. Rib in wrestling language, do you remember what that means?
Well, I know ribs in general. It's not just wrestling.
Is it not?
No, I've heard of...
Is that like a Protestant word then, is it? Or because we never...
You lean forward really aggressively then, like talking to your children.
Is there Tiffin in this house and you're not telling me? No, I'm really serious.
No, I've heard the term rib before, but yeah, no, it means pranks.
Or japes.
Japes.
It's a great word, yeah. I'll nick that one.
So is he like kind of the George Clooney of the wrestling world?
Was George Clooney a prankster?
Yes! Oh my god. George Clooney is an infamous prankster.
Because there are mean-spirited pranks.
Yeah, that's the kind of pranks George Clooney does.
Okay. Because, I mean, I don't know if you mentioned before in wrestling, I know Mr. Perfect, for instance, was someone who was maybe known as a ribber, but a lot of those 80s wrestling ribs are a little bit mean, as in, like, you know, hey, let's take your bag and throw it in the river, kind of, you know. That's not a fun prank.
No, that's just bullying.
I've got some like own pranks which were tweeted in, and some ones from memory, which I'll maybe tell you about. Some ones you might want to hear. A really good one with stuff with Owen is there was an occasion once where they were bringing in like farm animals because they were doing a hog pen match.
Right.
And the animals were being brought to the arena, kind of go, right, where is it we need to bring them? And Owen would always just insert himself into these situations, and as a pure confidence man, and get the result he wanted to. And he was able to convince the animal handlers to show them, this is where you need to bring the animals, and he brought them to Vince's office. So when Vince arrived for the pay-per-view, there was like farm animals, like barn animals in his office. It was fucking ridiculous.
That's amazing. So did he get punished for that?
No, because it was always like Owen being like kind of a good-natured kind of...
Now, do you think he got away with that maybe more than other wrestlers might because of his established heritage?
I think so. I mean, like, I know that British Bulldog, when he used to ride with Owen on the road, he would get pranked constantly, but he would always have like literally tears streaming down his face the whole time, because Owen would just always get to him in this really like prankish kind of way. A great one I like as well was Jim Ross, who at the time was in charge of talent relations. So if you're fired or whatever, he's the guy who kind of tells you. And he was handing out a lot of suspensions and firings for people who were doing drugs and all that. And Owen knew that JR was under a lot of stress at this moment in time. And what Owen decided to do as a little bit of a funny joke was when Jim Ross was walking in the hallway, was to get a donut and loads of powdered sugar, rub it all over his face, and then walk over to Jim Ross, like knock into him, like, hey man, pretend he was doing that. There's also the great story as well, and I think if this happened to anyone other than Michael Cole, people would think that it's foul play.
Right.
But Michael Cole on his very first night had to do an interview live, on pay-per-view, big show. Young Michael Cole in his tuxedo, and he was the unfortunate enough to be interviewing, but Owen Hart and Davy Boy, the British Bulldog. And Owen, right before the camera went live on pay-per-view, decided to open up a 2-litre bottle of Diet Cola and pour it slowly down the back of Michael Cole's jacket. So Michael Cole was literally standing there frozen with fear, and all of a sudden he poured it all down his back, and then they went, and we're live! And Michael Cole's like, hi everyone, welcome to wrestling, I'm Michael Cole!
Now that is quite mean. Aww.
No, here's mean, alright, here's real mean. There was a guy called Gangrel, and Gangrel lost his watch once, okay? He thought he lost his watch, but Owen actually had taken his watch and hidden it on him. But to sell, this is what Owen was really known for, just the commitment to the bits. To sell this, Owen stayed with Gangrel literally for hours after the show ended in the arena, searching everywhere. Where could it be? I don't know, man. Where is it? Let's check the bags. Let's check security. Arenas are big. And then he finally revealed to him hours after the fact that, yeah, he actually had his watch.
You see, now that, I feel that can't be too mean because because you can't be angry at someone who spent the last, 4 hours helping you find something and to reveal that they had it all along.
That's true.
That is a lot of,
there's love in that prank.
There is. It's like...
I want to spend time with you, Gangrel. I want to find a watch with you. I want to help you find your watch that I hid. In the matches as well, Owen would oftentimes, particularly house show matches when it wasn't on TV, Owen would do ridiculous shit. Like, he wrestled Edge, we talked about there. He was wrestling Edge on the house shows, the non-televised shows. There was one match where he did, and sometimes wrestlers will pull out a foreign object, like brass knuckles or something stiff for his hand. Yeah. And he pulled out a thing, and Edge didn't know what it was. He was just like, I don't know. And Edge sold it like he'd been punched with a really serious foreign object. And then Owen turned to the crowd and the referee revealed what he actually had as Edge was on the ground selling like he'd been killed. It was a tissue that he had in his hands. So Edge was made to look like a bit of a fool. The all-time greatest Owen Hart in-ring prank story, though, has to be when him and Mick Foley, who was wrestling as Dude Love at the time, found out that Dave Meltzer was in the audience for their show.
Okay.
And most wrestlers who were kind of reading Meltzer's stuff at the time, getting reviewed. This is before the Joe Graham star rating, so this is what people used to take as serious in wrestling. Was this guy called Meltzer had a star rating system.
Yeah, did he though?
Did he rate how handsome the wrestlers were though? He didn't. So they decided they were going to put on purposely the worst match possible.
Wow.
Also, Steve Austin was at ringside. They wanted to make him laugh as well, no matter what. So they did things in this match, like it was meant to be a hardcore brawl, and they had the individual lids of fountain sodas, the little plastic cup things, and he'd hit him with it, and he'd be like, ah, like a chair shot. And then the most dreaded weapon of all, which was a big bag of popcorn. Hit him with a big bag of popcorn. No! Falls into the ground. And as Owen was selling, he did popcorn angels in it, as he was selling for it. So the thing he used to do a lot is also ringing people up and pretending to be someone else and tricking them. He was a big prank caller. But the number one time he did that was his dad. And Stu Hart is a very serious individual, really, really serious.
Right.
Comes from that world of shooters, proper submission wrestling. And Stu Hart was visiting because WrestleMania was in town and his sons were wrestling on it. And Owen rang up and pretended to be a guy who used to design belts for wrestling companies back in the day. And Stu starts getting really, really agitated. Brett was the one who told the story in his book. And on the other end of the phone, Owen Hart is pretending to be this guy who Stu knew from years and years ago, claiming that Stu never had the balls to challenge him to a fight. And you've got 60-something-year-old Stu Hart screaming on the phone going, you always wanted to try me, didn't you? But you never had the courage to try me. You want to try me? Let's go on, let's try me. Because this 60-something-year-old man ready to fight someone. It was his son, Owen, on the phone pretending to, There was one time as well where he... where he enlisted the police to try and arrest someone he was travelling with on the road, got him pulled out of the car, and Vince McMahon saw them as well at the same time.
Oh my god.
So, I don't know, some of you his pranks is evil, but seeing as we're coming from a world in wrestling where people have done some very nasty things.
It's not quite as cruel as the putting all the crumbled cookies into DDP's bed.
No, that's the worst. So he did all these things, he didn't put fucking cookies in anyone's bed.
It's not sick.
I guess we're into the point now where, that Owen died.
Yeah.
Do you know under which circumstances he died?
Sad ones. Everyone always talks about how sad it is that he died. I mean, I imagine it would be sad regardless because he must have died quite young.
Because I mean, I know I've always felt really bad about the Mr. Perfect episode where I was like, and then he,
you had no idea.
Died, and you're like, yeah. And I'm not trying to do that. I mean, you obviously knew that Owen passed.
Yeah.
Owen died in like a really, really tragic, probably the most tragic, unfortunate like mishap, things gone wrong in wrestling ever. You remember we talked about the Blue Blazer character that Owen did? He did that in the 80s. Well, towards the start of 1999, Owen started doing the Blue Blazer character again.
Oh, wow.
Although this time it was done as kind of like a mock-up of like old kind of wrestling good guy characters. Like he would cut promos saying, I'm the Blue Blazer and I always drink my milk. Woo! But here's the thing, he would insist he wasn't the Blue Blazer. So the Blue Blazer would never be seen at the same place at the same time as Owen Hart.
Oh, but he was still doing the Owen Hart thing at the same time?
So he was pretending that he was two people. Even though on a number of occasions Owen Hart was unmasked as the Blue Blazer and he was like, oh no! But then the next week he was like, no, that wasn't me. My favourite one was when there was a guy called Curtis Hughes, who was a black gentleman who came out in the Blue Blazer gear. And Owen's like, who's that Blue Blazer guy? There he is over there! I told you, there he is! So Owen was doing this character again.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason for it was that Vince Russo thought that Owen had a lot of comedy kind of chops.
Yeah, clearly.
And thought this was a fun thing to do. And part of the Blue Blazer gimmick was that he was this stupid, superhero wannabe and he was, a klutz. And there was the idea for Owen to make these entrances as the Blue Blazer, and he did it once or twice successfully, where he would come down on one of those kind of zip cords, like come down from a height or whatever, and kind of come in. The idea was that he would zip all the way down to the ring, and then literally with a foot to go, he would fall and splat on his face, like oh, what a silly, muck-up thing for him to do. Mm-hmm. Sting in WCW was doing a very similar thing at the time. He would come down like a zip line, like straight to the ring. It was like, whoa, he came from the sky. That's amazing. I'm guessing
Sting wouldn't then fall over.
No, Sting wouldn't be all cool and stuff as he slowly took off all the rigging. At a pay-per-view called Over the Edge in 1999, Owen was scheduled to win the Intercontinental Championship from The Godfather in a match. And the match never happened because when Owen was meant to make his entrance as the Blue Blazer, there was a problem with the rigging for the zip line that he came down on. I'm getting all choked up just talking about this now. This is really fucking horrible. I'll never get used to this. But Owen's failsafe on it, which was meant to release so he could do the quick fall, went too early and he fell 25, 30 feet into the ring and he landed chest first in the turnbuckle.
Jesus
so
Christ.
The live crowd saw that it was never shown on TV because it was a pay-per-view, so it was on a delay. So what he had was the Blue Blazer promo airing, and then all of a sudden you cut back to silence in the arena, and then onto Jim Ross, who's literally looked like he's just, what he's seen. And he has to explain to the audience that, Owen Hart has fell, and we don't know what's happening. And they went on with the show, they went on with the pay-per-view. And like an hour or so later, Owen was pronounced as dead at the hospital because he had such serious injuries. And they finished off the show. And I didn't know about this until the next day I tuned in because I didn't watch the pay-per-view that night because it was a school night and I couldn't stay up. And I watched the next night. I was like, hey, it's time for Monday Night Raw. It was on a Friday or whatever Raw would be. And I tuned in and straight away I see the graphic in loving memory of Owen Hart.
Oh, God.
And then I had 2 hours of like all my favourite wrestlers breaking character in tears, talking about how Owen Hart was this amazing guy, best friend, such a lovely guy, family man, and he's been taken before his time. And I remember as a kid thinking that this is a story, surely it can't be real. I remember feeling so weird because Owen was always a heel when I had watched, and there were all these people talking about how amazing Owen was, and they had some matches and all the crowd were chanting for Owen and holding up signs saying Owen Hart will live forever, and wrestlers dedicating their matches to him. And it was absolutely one of the most horrible situations ever. A lot of blame went around as a result. Some people blame the writers. How dare you write Owen Hart to have a gimmick where he has to do something so high risk?
That's not fair.
There's also people who think that, the main issue was the fact that he was given the incorrect harness. He wasn't given the proper harness. The harness malfunctioned because it had this quick release thing. It wasn't fit for purpose, basically. It wasn't meant to support his weight. It was very dangerous.
Is that true?
That is true, apparently, that the failsafe was not working on it properly. And then there's people who say as well, which is Owen said that he didn't want to do this stuff. He didn't want to do the big scary entrance. He was a wrestler. He's a guy who was, towards the tail end of his career. He was planning on retiring in a year or two after this.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And you think about all the things that he was doing, and he was doing it for his family and for this to happen. And you've got Brett over in WCW then, who hears this, and of course Brett's got bad vibes with the WWF, and he's coming out then saying, like, how dare you do this to my brother. Owen's funeral happened, and shortly thereafter there was a lot of bad blood because people really felt that WWF did a bad thing or a disservice by continuing the show after the fact. And the fact that they kept the pay-per-view going for the extra hour after Owen had passed away. Their logic being, as a pay-per-view company, if they don't deliver on that pay-per-view, they're liable for, blah, 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 blah. Some people saying, you heartless monsters, the show must not go on. I think the real thing that got on some people's craw was when there were people kind of saying, oh, it's what he would have wanted. Owen would have wanted the show to go on. I don't think anyone knows what he would have wanted in that situation. I don't think that's a topic that would have come up.
No.
But one of the most tragic, horrible ends to a life in wrestling ever. I mean, I really think it's horrible because, there's no shortage of tragedy in wrestling. You don't need me to tell you that. But when you talk about a guy who's known for being like a pure wrestler, as someone who's there for the love of it and there to make there to make money for his family and to support his family. He was never driven by ego, or if it was driven by money, it was money so his kids could, go to college and not have to worry and stuff like that. And the real sad thing about it is that Owen Hart's my favourite wrestler, and we're in a room full of wrestling figures and wrestling memorabilia. And there ain't no Owen Hart wrestling memorabilia in this room. That t-shirt that I got was something that someone made up themselves. Owen's widow sued the company, and she held them liable for what happened. She said it was their fault. It went on and on and on for a long, long time. She wrote a book that was like full of like all this scandalous stuff that was not fact-checked. It was ghost-written. She made all these accusations. And all this stuff coming out saying that, like, Owen was like forced and, to do all these horrible things in the company that he never wanted to do. As a result, Owen was basically not included in any kind of wrestling compilations. A documentary came out about him last year, but it was as a result of legal negotiations. It was around 50 minutes long, and it was more kind of a, hey, here was Owen Hart as a wrestler, as opposed to really getting into what he meant for the wrestling community and whatnot. It's really sad. Owen should be in the Hall of Fame. He's not. And that's because his widow does not want her husband's name associated with the company. I mean, there has been leeway and there's been concessions, obviously, because he's on the network and he's been on some DVD releases. I do believe that there is talks that there is going to be like an Owen Hart figure at some point. But then, like, it seems like every time that, like, it's settled and it's done and dusted, then, like, another thing comes out. And I'm sorry I'm not, like, can give you the most up to date stuff about it. But, the last I checked, we did an A podcast, his own tribute. When we did that episode, because we did a tribute to Owen instead of covering that pay-per-view, because we thought it would be a bit poor taste. Yeah. I still kind of stand by that decision. Yeah. Even though WWE have included that pay-per-view in all its fucking gruesome glory, including Jim Ross having to announce to everyone that Owen Hart has died, that's on the network. Why? I don't know. I think that's wildly tasteless.
Because I knew you guys did an Owen Hart episode. I didn't know it was a tribute episode.
Oh yeah, we did a tribute episode in the timeline.
A few people tweeted in saying, "Oh well, whatever you talk about, just mention the Astro podcast episode." And I knew you hadn't done lots of episodes about individual wrestlers. I didn't know that was why. I just assumed that was, I don't know, there was something. Oh, that's fucking...
And it's really sad because, the honest truth is, no one's going to be able to turn around to a widow and kind of go, oh, you're being unreasonable. And
no, because whatever she decides to do is going to seem reasonable to her. And Christ, I can't even imagine.
And when you add in there the politics of wrestling and WCW versus WWF, I know that Vince and WWF, there was a settlement. Like, they did pay the family. They set up, there was a foundation that was set up as well, like the Owen Hart Foundation, to a charitable thing and all that. But the reality is, and the sad truth is, and we talked about, recent episodes, this guy's not on the network, or that guy's not on the network. Owen's, kind of not featured in the way that he should be, seeing as how popular he was as a wrestler and what a big inspiration he was to so many of the current crop of talented guys. that he does not get. He doesn't get like put on the pedestal that I think he should.
Yeah.
And I really think that's really sad. You know, I really, really do. I mean, I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but when I typed in like Owen Hart Slammy Awards, one of the first things that comes up is a clip from the Attitude Era podcast talking about it. Where the fuck is all the lengthy stuff from WWE talking about how awesome Owen is? And obviously they can't do it because the family's got problems with it. And it ripped the Hart family apart quite badly.
I can only imagine.
You got 12 kids, there's obviously going to be some who take one side and some who take the other side. And then when, like, British Bulldog, for instance, he went back to WWF in 2000, and some people were like, that's a slap in the face to Owen, how dare you, you know, they killed your brother-in-law. And, you know, it's just horrible. And it's really, I wish I could, like, you know, put a nice positive spin on it, but honestly, I've been kind of thinking about it since 1999, and other than actually understanding it a little bit more now, and I've listened to Vince Russo talk about it, I've listened to the wrestlers involved talk about it, I listened to Brett and Martha talk about it, but
I think I can think of a positive spin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's my place to do so, but I would say in terms of, you know, what he would have wanted, obviously there's only so much you can guess. His wife probably has a fairly good idea, I would have hoped, his widow, but it seems like the thing he always wanted was, you know, to make people smile. He was constantly playing these japes.
Yeah.
Constantly trying to, you know, be this silly, wacky guy, but also a genuinely good wrestler.
I mean, he always, as goofy as he could get when it, you know, it counted when it mattered.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't as if he was never putting on an awesome show. He was
No.
always putting on an awesome show.
But the fact it was all of that, and he was helping these young wrestlers, and he was setting this fantastic, just such important role model to future generations. I think the positive spin we could take is, like you were saying, this current crop of, you know, wholesome, positive wrestlers who are probably going to live long, healthy lives is quite possibly an almost direct result from his influence.
Absolutely. I think he was a real, like, it was really sad to see, like, someone who was kind of, in many respects, like a real kind of positive message or a positive image, I think, for wrestlers to kind of to go in such a tragic way. It's just so horrible. And
yeah,
I kind of, there's so many wrestlers who you kind of, I mean, when Mr. Perfect passed away, you know, the unfortunate truth was it was no surprise when he passed away.
Yeah, it was kind of his own.
You know,
he did it to himself in a way.
You know, that the wrestler who frequently was taught as having drug problems died of a drug overdose. You know, and that's so sad about wrestling is that there's so many guys where it's like, oh, that guy who looked like he was slightly too big, yeah, he died of steroids. You know, it's just there's so many of those sad stories. And
but the fact it's Owen who tried so hard his entire career not to be an ego, not to do the whole partying lifestyle, to save money wherever possible so he could send it back home, so that he could, you know, not do these ridiculous moves all the time for his own ego's sake, so that he could live long enough to spend time with his kids. And then to die in the ring, that's fucking heartbreaking.
It's so horrible. And like wrestling kind of, you're talking about, this is the middle of 1999. This is when wrestling was at the top of that peak, and then something like that came along. Like,
so this is right in the middle of like the
Attitude
Attitude Era.
Yeah.
But this isn't when they stopped being Attitude Era. This isn't when they became PG.
No, they kept going. You had that tribute show week after that. Business as usual. What's Undertaker done to Steve Austin? What's the corporate ministry up to? It's really sad. I mean, you have to understand, I guess, that it's such a big company and a big organization that it was always going to kind of move on and, you know, keep motoring away. That's always been their way of doing things. But man,
doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
And I'll tell you, I don't know. I guess it's because I could obviously see. When we were watching the stuff with Owen, I was so excited to show you all this stuff, and I could see that you were enjoying it, and it wasn't just the matches, you were getting him for the reasons why people love him, and I was so happy about that. And there was always this little bit in the back of my mind kind of going, you're going to have to talk about this thing. And that is sad. As you said, the first thing you typed in was, you know, Owen Hart into Google, and what comes up is Owen Hart's died tragically, dead, and I hate that. I hate that so much.
I do feel that whether or not WWE are responsible for his death, I don't want to go into, but I do feel their responsibility for his image after he's died.
Yeah.
Even if they have these issues with his his widow.
I think so, yeah.
There's still things you can do to make sure. I think you should be a bit responsible for your workers like that.
What I think was really like touching is when Brett had he returned to the company after in like a couple of years ago, just to kind of come back and make amends and all that kind of stuff. And he came out like on SummerSlam and he had a t-shirt on that it was him and Owen. There's a famous image of the two of them kind of wrestling with each other, and that like meant so much. The fact that his image was there, it was remembered again. Because I think a lot of people could look at this and kind of think, oh, the WWE's been very callous, they're just trying to cover it over. They don't want people to know about him because he died in tragic circumstances. It reflects badly on the company. It's not. It's what you've got is compromise. And the unfortunate thing, it's a compromise. I don't think either side is happy because the fans certainly don't seem to get what they should from the memory of Owen, I don't think. No. And I don't think, obviously, the family isn't happy because there's still ongoing issues.
I still don't know what this whole first issue was, but if there was already grounds for people from the Hart family to leave the company, they were already on bad terms. Yeah. And then this happens, I can completely see why any of them would go fuck
People have always said that if Bret Hart can make amends and come back to the company after everything he'd been through, that surely Owen's wife can. But it's not the same thing at all.
Naive.
It's so naive. I mean, because like
the father of your children?
Yeah, and Owen Hart as well. Like Owen Hart's wife, like yes, she was married to a wrestler, but I don't think you can necessarily compare like someone coming back to the company who's going to make a couple of $100,000 in the process to a widow who's trying to maybe maintain an image. But I mean, I know, like having read Brett's book and read into some of it, that there is like, it's not a simple case. I mean, as the widow is completely without like issue, and she has had like she's made allegations. Yeah. She's not as innocent. I don't say she's not as innocent.
She's not played ball.
I get, but I mean, like, how can you play ball?
I guess no, you can't.
It's a fucking horrible situation. People always want in wrestling or in the world just to have a simple explanation. That was caused by that. Ending, It's their fault.
Life doesn't work that way.
It's not as simple as that.
But Christ, I mean, imagine the number of times, right, sitting over dinner, he must have come home battered and bruised, injured, and she's gone, look after yourself, please make sure you're okay.
It'll all be worth it because in 2 years...
he'll be like, oh, it's going to be worth it, honey. We're going to, it's going to be fine. And we're going to be able to retire to Barbados and buy an awesome house, and our kids will go to any college they want.
If his kids have been looked after and provided for, I think that's probably the most important thing, because that's what he was always working towards. He wanted his family to be looked after and provided for. So if that has happened, then I guess that's a good thing. But it's a real horrible thing. You think, oh, it's just a simple little explanation. You lift it up and you see the kind of the black bile of wrestling politics and the Hart family kind of infighting. It's just a fucking... It takes a lot more than a podcast chatting about Owen Hart to get to the bottom of it, unfortunately. Yeah. Which is sad. It really is. But I think the positives that we can bear on is the influence that Owen has had. His ability to synthesize that style, popularizing that kind of a creepy heel, that kind of heel that wasn't just a big nasty bastard or a big scary guy or a total crook, just being like, a little creep. I see so much of Owen in Seth Rollins. I see so much of Owen in Kevin Owens, in Chris Jericho. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably one of the most positive things, is that maybe if Owen isn't necessarily, as obviously celebrated as we think he should, if you look at the style of wrestlers, I'm pretty sure most of the crop of those current top guys would list Owen Hart as being one of their influences.
I wonder if Owen Hart had never existed, if I would be even as much of a wrestling fan now as...
Who knows?
I mean, you have just listed my 3 favourite wrestlers.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You ever read a wrestling autobiography of anyone who kind of came up around this time, and they'll always mention Owen, either like his ribs, or him like influencing them, or him helping them out, or him having an awesome match. And he's someone who I really hope, I think I said this last time we did the podcast trivia episode, I really hope that we can kind of always just try and focus on the positives. And there's so much joy there. I mean, that's one of the great things about the network. Even though he's not featured, he is there. If you do a bit of searching, there's so much great stuff. There's so many great Owen Hart matches, and the best thing about them is that he wrestled during a time when a lot of people didn't watch wrestling. It may surprise you that Owen Hart and Yokozuna had an amazing run as a tag team, for instance, or all these guys you had these great matches with or great feuds with that most people probably haven't watched because it wasn't when wrestling was super cool or super popular. And I was able to find, even from doing this, matches of Owens that I'd not seen and still be able to be fucking blown away. He wrestled thousands of matches and most of them are available to watch. And I think if you really want to spend time, like, you can find some amazing stuff from him from when he was in Japan and around the world. There is a lot of amazing Owen Hart stuff out there. We started watching a compilation of his promos, and he's got some amazing promos as well. I mean, there's so much about Owen that is there to enjoy, and I hope that we'll get to a point where WWE will start to put this together and make proper collections, not just kind of shambolic documentaries that Bret Hart says aren't worth the DVDs they're printed on.
Yeah, I really, really hope that they manage to resolve just any amount of what's going on.
I just kind of hope that everyone can be kind of happy. You know, I want the family to be happy. I want the fans to be able to get what they want. It might be wishful thinking.
I think that is probably slightly wishful thinking. I just hope that everyone feels not too hard done by, I guess, but that's probably even wishful thinking.
It is. It's a sad situation. I guess that's the sad point about if you go through lots of wrestling, you will hit these moments. And I guess that's the real sad or hard thing about introducing someone into wrestling, is that for every really great moment you show them, there is also these really sad moments in wrestling.
Do you know what's really depressing though?
What's that?
It is hard as a new wrestling fan, and I know we've not covered a huge number of wrestlers who've died, but in terms of the percentage, I'd say it's, 20% of the wrestlers we've covered so far have had some kind of sad death or died too early. And it's just, I know things are different now, partly thanks to Owen Hart, that wrestlers aren't overdoing it as much as they used to. But it is hard watching that and knowing that even the wrestlers that look after themselves and are trying so hard to be, like Kevin Owens with his family and his kids, and a freak accident can be all it takes to end a career.
I guess many people will kind of go, I guess that's more to the benefit of the fact that, you know, that they wouldn't do something as fucking harebrained as that. It's like a real stupid stunt. Because, I mean, regardless if you want to say whose fault or whose blame it was, that's a stupid stunt to be doing. You don't need to do that in wrestling, I guess.
I'm thankful for health and safety gone mad. And people putting up tiny fences on ridiculously short ledges.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's ridiculous. Come on, no one's going to fall off there. No, I'm glad for it now. Anything like that is good. Please protect all these wrestlers.
Yeah.
I want them to live to retire.
Our next presenter is the Wait a minute, what's this? What's the matter? Owen Hart, Slammy Award winner.
Woo! I did it again! And you know what?
No, you're presenting this. You gotta be thankful, my man. Owen spent a whole year of his life promoting this crummy show.
I did it again!
Yes!
And I have nobody to thank. Once again, I did it all by my sweet little self. 2-time Slammy Award winner. I knew it. I'm a winner. I did it. Woo! Hey, Bulldog, you may have 2 titles, but you don't have 2 Slammies.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, Vader and Mankind, this Sunday at WrestleMania, you're going to be in for the fight of your life, because the Bulldog and myself, we haven't been better ever. And we're going to beat you and Mankind. And you know what, Vader? You don't have 2 Slammies like I do, because you're losers and we're winners. Me and my Slammies.
So, on to tweets, I guess. Got some lovely tweets here, which, of course, make a bit more sense to me now that I've learned what I've learned. Podcast Activate on Twitter says, I've always wondered if we'd have seen Bret back in WWE sooner if we didn't lose Owen.
It's possible. I mean, it did definitely bear on him for a long time. Particularly initially, he did hold the company quite accountable for it, and he thought that it was a lot of their wrongdoing.
Yeah.
But I think it was over the process of time that, like, and saw some of the kind of, you know, he was involved in a lot of the litigation stuff that happens. I think he did come around to it. I mean, like, he doesn't hold them responsible for that now. That's definitely true.
Goodnight Love 35 says, an amazing wrestler I wish I could have been around for as a fan. Love Owen so much, the most selfless of the Hart family.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the Hart family are characterised by not such nice things. that thing that Owen was talking about, we talked about Owen, what his goals were and what he wanted to do. There are a lot of the Hart family who, quite frankly, would have stepped over any other member of the Hart family to get a little bit of success for themselves, and have done some quite shitty things. Bret's not like completely squeaky clean, he's done shit as well, but Owen was by far, the youngest of the Harts, and also the one that seemed to have the best qualities, the most virtues, I guess.
Captain Trash says, probably the greatest wrestler to come out of North America, maybe the world.
Wow.
Always fun, never too serious.
I like that. Yeah, there's something about wrestlers who take themselves too seriously. And that was probably one of the things that pushed people away from Bret and draw more to Owen, was that Bret always took himself very seriously. People thought, do you have to take yourself that seriously to be that good? And here was Owen, who was probably just as good in the ring, and yet was able to have, be lighthearted. Owen was never going to storm out of a room or storm out of a building because he didn't like the finish or he didn't like working with someone. He'd do whatever. Case in point, he would do any of these kind of angles, work with anyone, and he would always make it work because he loved to wrestle.
Jamie316 says, it speaks to his talent and originality that he was never known for just being Bret Hart's brother.
Yeah, to actually take something like Bret Hart, if you look at anyone who's kind of a younger brother, or even oftentimes like a son even of or a daughter of wrestlers, it's a steep hill to climb, and to actually still keep the Hart name, sharpshooter, similar ring attire, and yet no one's ever going to get the two of those mixed up, or no one's going to go, Bret's way better than Owen. It was always like a proper rivalry. Absolutely.
I think it says a lot about him that out of all the tweets we've gotten, like I said, huge number of them were match recommendations. But by far and away, other than the nugget comments, the next popular tweet was just people talking about how funny he was. People were constantly going on about the ribs, him being the locker room clown. We've received so many.
Am I right in saying that it's probably, of all the tweets that we've gotten for wrestlers, probably the most positive, I guess, because there's no one kind of going, he's overrated, or don't watch this match, or except for that thing. It always seems, because I glanced through and it all seems to be real heartfelt. He made a positive impression on me because, or
I guess so. Honestly, it was hard for me to get that opinion because so many of them were Owen Hart is a piece of shit. So I did,
the context of this episode has probably really helped you with these tweets.
Now I realise they were fond, affectionate comments. Obviously, beforehand, I thought maybe people just hated him. But I think people seem to love him. Got a tweet here from Yes Mode Games. Only knew him as the wrestler who died in '99. But then I listened to the Attitude Era podcast episode on him, and now he's an absolute favourite. That
was probably one of the nicest things about doing that podcast, was the fact that, Adam, who watched during the Attitude Era, he knew, because he started watching after Owen had passed, and all he knew about was Owen as the wrestler who died, and Billy knew him as the wrestler who died. And what was so nice is that I was always thinking in my head, kind of going, am I just an Owen Hart super fan who kind of puts too much emphasis on how funny he is or how good he is because he died in a tragic circumstance, and I feel I have to kind of overcompensate for that by being, hey everyone, look at Owen Hart, he's great. And I'll tell you, you've watched it, Billy's watched it, Adam's watched it, three very, very different people from three very, very different backgrounds with very, very different levels of knowledge, and you've all reached the same conclusion, is that he's funny, he's impressive to watch when he's wrestling, and he's a good person. And I think that's why I love so much. There's something so universal about him. I've never met a wrestling fan who's not had some positive memory or some positive impression of Owen. And if a wrestler can make me laugh, that's always such an important thing. I think it's so important to be able to laugh in wrestling, because it's men and women wrestling around in little pants, and that is funny, and that needs to be accentuated with some humour. But also I like to be impressed, and Owen was able to do all those things. And that's why he's always going to be probably my favourite wrestler. I think he's a special place in my heart. And if I hear people who are getting into Owen or discovering Owen, that's all the more, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck WWE. If they can't do what we'd like them to do, I think it's awesome that you've been responsible for loads of people discovering how great he is, and that's fantastic.
It means more to me through my podcast that if I've made someone kind of go, oh shit, Owen Hart, he's actually pretty cool and not just someone who died. That means way more to me than so many things to do a podcast success, to be honest.
That probably really is what he would have wanted.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's a winner, damn it, and he did it all by his sweet little self. Thank you so much for listening to this I don't say it was very taxing, but it definitely was quite an emotional episode in many ways. It's one thing telling your two knucklehead friends you talk about the Attitude Era with about all these tragic events, but I was really I was dreading talking to you about this. I really...
I can't even imagine going through this all the matches we watched, the whole episode that we've just recorded, and knowing that's in the back of your head that you've got to tell me that. That must be hard.
It was really fucking hard.
We'll pour you a nice big glass of wine.
Yes, I did it! I managed to not cry during the episode. I'm a winner! Woo! And let me tell you something, Joanna Graham. You did not cry when talking about Owen Hart. And you don't have two slammies. But yeah, it's been a blast talking about Owen. This was an episode that is definitely like a milestone episode in many ways. To be able to talk about Owen, that's a big deal. If you're a new fan or trying to get someone into wrestling, I should say, don't fucking start by telling them about Owen. They need to be eased into it. I would say, because it's quite emotional, you know, highs and lows and all that. And you know what? Usually this is a point where we would do our promos or you know, hey, go check out all our other things, yada yada yada. If you've reached this point, there's probably the most important thing that you can do right now. An amazing suggestion by Joe, and this is very touching. I thought, just go tell someone about Owen Hart, okay?
Yeah.
That's your homework for this week.
Contribute to the part of the internet which doesn't come up as the number one result of Owen Hart died tragically. Let's try and make it more positive than that.
Exactly. It seems like something very heartfelt. It's just SEO. That's all we're doing here. Optimization.
I've got my content strategy here.
Content strategy to make it so depressing to talk about Owen. But yeah, seriously, do that this week, okay? We're not promoting anything. You just go tell someone about Owen Hart. Show them Owen Hart stealing the Slammy Award. Read about Owen Hart accidentally getting someone arrested, okay? Do that, alright? Watch an Owen Hart match. Watch Owen and Brett, okay? Take 20 minutes of your day, show someone Owen and Brett, and make a positive impact on their life, okay?
I swear it's worth it.
It is absolutely worth it. I need to go lie down now, I think.
Yeah, me too. Fucking hell.
It's a goodbye from me, Kevin.
And a goodbye from me, Joe.
And we'll catch you next time on How to Wrestling.
See ya.